Chapter 185. In this world, apart from the dead Thousand Illusions esteemed being, no one knew him better than Li Mu. Because he had the memories of Thousand Illusions esteemed being, he had a deep interaction with Old Wang in the past 6 months. He understood Old Wang and Thousand Illusions even more. Li Mu was incomparably familiar with his facial expression, speech, actions, punctuation, and stress. He could even imitate them. This was thanks to his experience in the opera house and the self-hypnosis method He taught him. I'm Thousand Illusions esteemed being, I'm Thousand Illusions esteemed being. Li Mu repeated in his heart, and his aura changed again. His figure was not as tall as Chu Jiang of Gojosian, but when he looked up at Chu Jiang of Gojosian, it was as if he was looking down on him. As he sensed the aura on Li Mu's body that changed rapidly, King Chu Jiang's expression underwent an unprecedented change, and he practically spoke with a trembling voice. No, impossible. Lord Qianhuan has already been annihilated by the Talisman sect. It's impossible for you to be Lord Qianhuan. Li Mu smiled and said, very good. It seems that even the demon sect thinks that I'm dead. That avatar's death was worth it. Chu Jiang of Gojosian's heart was beating wildly. He knew Thousand Illusions esteemed being very well. Among the 10 great elders of the demon sect, Thousand Illusions esteemed being was the best in both strength and scheming. Even his master, the Nether Saint, was inferior to Thousand Illusions esteemed being. When the first rumor spread that Thousand Illusions esteemed being killed by the experts of Buddhism and Taoism, he scoffed at it. Those people didn't understand Thousand Illusions esteemed being at all. He was a cautious person, and the cultivation technique he cultivated was a demonic art that was good at seizing souls. He was no less difficult to deal with than the experts of the upper realm. Sure enough, after half a year, there was news of Thousand Illusions esteemed being again. Not only did he not die, but he also secretly gathered the 7 kinds of souls of Yin, Yang, and 5 elements. He single-handedly planned the corpse tide in Zhou County and successfully restored his cultivation base to Dongxian. Upon hearing this news, Chu Jiang of Gojosian felt nothing but admiration. Although there was news that Master Qianhuan had been killed by Fulu School, Chu Jiang of Gojosian still didn't believe it. With the Thousand Illusions' venerable master's strength and personality, it was hard to believe that he had been completely killed. At this moment, it wasn't that he suspected that this person wasn't Guru Thousand Illusions. It was that he didn't want to believe it, and didn't dare to believe it. At the critical moment when he was about to activate the 18 Yin prison formation, Venerable Qianhuan had appeared in the county city. What was his purpose? Would it affect the plan that he had been planning for 5 years? The name Qianhuan was like a god in the demon sect. Chu Jiang of Gojosian suppressed the fear in his heart and asked, You are really Lord Qianhuan? Li Mu coldly snorted and asked, could it be that you really think that I was completely killed by Fulu School? In reality, if he hadn't met Li Mu, Thousand Illusions esteemed being might really have possessed someone else's body. Li Mu's words seemed arrogant, but it was in line with Thousand Illusions esteemed being's temperament and strength. Chu Jiang of Gojosian didn't dare to doubt him and immediately said, this little demon doesn't dare. Not to mention that this person's tone and demeanor were extremely similar to the Lord Qianhuan he was familiar with. Only the Nether Hell Saint knew his real name, Zhang Daring. If this person wasn't Thousand Illusions esteemed being, how could he know his real name? Unless someone had possessed Thousand Illusions esteemed being. However, if this person could possess Thousand Illusions esteemed being, he could crush a 5th-level soul as easily as crushing an ant. Why would he waste so much time talking to him? Chu Jiang of Gojosian thought for a while and finally asked the question in his heart, why did Lord Thousand Illusions esteemed being save these people? Saving the sisters Lu Hanyan and Bai Yinshin was his only flaw. In reality, Li Mu couldn't find an excuse at all. Fortunately, with Thousand Illusions esteemed being's identity and status, he didn't need to find an excuse. Slap. Li Mu slapped Chu Jiang of Gojosian's face and said indifferently, are you qualified to ask about my matters? Chu Jiang of Gojosian lowered his head and said fearfully, little demon, you've spoken too much. He didn't feel this slap at all, but it was a great humiliation. However, at this moment, Chu Jiang of Gojoseon didn't have a trace of resentment or unwillingness in his heart. There was only fear. In the eyes of the powerful Lord Thousand Illusions, the 10 kings of hell were merely ants. Even if he advanced to the 6th realm, he only barely had the qualifications to talk to him as an equal. He must have his reasons for possessing this person and protecting those people. Perhaps there was a huge conspiracy involved in this, a conspiracy that he didn't have the qualifications to know about. Before this, Lord Thousand Illusions had only used half a year to silently gather the souls of the yin-yang 5 elements body without alerting anyone. He had successfully used the yin-yang 5 elements soul refining formation to return to the profound wonderland. This kind of arrangement, in his opinion, could be said to be amazing. Compared to Lord Thousand Illusions, he spent 5 years to cultivate the 18 ghost generals and used a scheme to trick the North County government. It was not worth mentioning at all. Li Mu slapped Chu Jiang of Gojoseon and said, "These people are an important part of my big plan. The mother of the 2 snakes is from the dragon race. If I can successfully scheme against the dragon race, I have hope of advancing to the transcendence realm." In order to completely fool Chu Jiang of Gojoseon, every word Li Mu said had to be in line with Lord Thousand Illusions' style. Big plan, dragon race, transcendence. Nothing was more suitable for Lord Thousand Illusions. Dragon race, transcendence. Chu Jiang of Gojoseon was shocked. The dragon race was so powerful that even the demon sect didn't dare to provoke them. In order to advance to the transcendence realm, Lord Thousand Illusions even dared to scheme against the dragon race. He took a huge risk and caused such a big commotion just to advance to the 6th realm. On the other hand, Lord Thousand Illusions first used the Golden Mountain to escape and made everyone think that he was dead. Then, he possessed this little constable's body and silently carried out such a grand plan. He probably wouldn't be able to learn this kind of caution in his life. After Li Mu finished speaking, his face darkened, and he said coldly, "You idiot, you've already ruined my plan." Seeing Lord Thousand Illusions get angry, Chu Jiang of Gojoseon felt a chill in his body. The fear in his heart made him kneel on the ground subconsciously. He said in a trembling voice, "This little demon didn't mean it. Please spare my life, Lord Thousand Illusions. Please spare my life, Lord Thousand Illusions." Lord Thousand Illusions' position in his heart was too high. In the demon sect, the fear of a person in a lower position towards a person in a higher position was deeply rooted in everyone's heart. In Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's eyes, although this person only had a spirit condensation cultivation, he still bent his knees under Lord Thousand Illusions' shadow. The vengeful spirits and ferocious spirits in the distance watched this scene with incomparable shock. His Highness Chu Jiang of Gojoseon, who was incomparably powerful, actually knelt down to a human. In the past 5 years, the image that Chu Jiang of Gojoseon had built in their hearts collapsed with a bang. However, in the next moment, all the vengeful spirits and ferocious spirits of all sizes knelt down in unison. Even His Highness had knelt down. How could these little demons not kneel? Li Mu looked coldly at Chu Jiang of Gojoseon and said, "This seat has been planning this plan for a long time. If it weren't for you Ming, would have definitely scattered your soul today." Chu Jiang of Gojoseon kowtowed repeatedly and said, "Thank you, Lord, for your kindness in not killing me." The only way Li Mu could stall Chu Jiang of Gojoseon was to pretend to be Lord Thousand Illusions and fight head-on. Even with Madame Chu, he couldn't possibly defeat Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. He could only try his best to stall for time until the experts from Yangqiu County arrived. "Get up." Li Mu used the clear heart art to calm his mind. He looked up at the blood-red sky and said indifferently, 18 in hell formation. "You want to use the souls and blood essence of the people in this county to advance to the 6th realm?" Chu Jiang of Gojoseon bowed and said, "Lord Thousand Illusions is wise. This little one's aptitude is lacking. I have already stayed in the spectral realm for a long time. I have planned for 5 years just for today's opportunity," Li Mu said coldly. "Unfortunately, you chose the wrong place." Chu Jiang of Gojoseon raised his head and asked in shock, "Why?" Li Mu looked down and said, "At the bottom of the North County, there is a peerless 7th realm ferocious spirit suppressed by the vitality of the people in the city. If you sacrifice the people of this city, the ferocious spirit will lose its suppression and break out of the formation. At that time, even if you successfully advance, you will become its nourishment. Chu Jiang of Gojosian was shocked. There's such a thing? Why didn't I know about it? Li Mu snorted and said, are you saying that I'm lying to you? Chu Jiang of Gojosian immediately said, this little one definitely doesn't mean that. Li Mu glanced at him and said slowly, of course you don't know, because this involves an ancient secret of my demon sect. Even the 10 great elders might not know everything. Chapter 186. Back then, to prevent that vile soul from wreaking havoc, Emperor Taizu personally sealed that vile soul here and used the vitality of the county's hundreds of thousands of citizens to suppress it. If that vile soul breaks out of the seal, even I would have to avoid it. Li Mu had to pretend to be the Venerable Thousand Illusions while racking his brains to come up with a story to fool Chu Jiang of Gojosian. There was a risk that he would be seen through at any time. After all, the reason why Chu Jiang of Gojosian did not dare to act rashly was because he was afraid of the Venerable Thousand Illusions. Once he found out that Li Mu was just an assembled divinity imposter, he would turn on him immediately. Li Mu could not possibly defeat a peak 5th realm spirit. He could only stall for time as much as possible until a few 5th realm cultivators arrived from Yangqiu County. Chu Jiang of Gojosian's expression was uncertain. He was not doubting the words of the Venerable Thousand Illusions, but he had planned for 5 years for today. He wanted to break through to 6th realm and become an elder so that he would no longer be under others. He was unwilling to give up at such a crucial moment. Li Mu could see that Chu Jiang of Gojosian was unwilling to give up. If he continued to force him, it would probably backfire. He put his hands behind his back and said calmly, I can help you seal that vile soul for an hour, but I have a condition. Chu Jiang of Gojosian immediately said, please speak, Venerable Thousand Illusions. If the Venerable Thousand Illusions helped him for no reason, Chu Jiang of Gojosian would definitely be on high alert. The Venerable Thousand Illusions, who was known for being sinister and cunning, would definitely not be so generous. Perhaps he had already included Chu Jiang of Gojosian in his calculations. His condition made Chu Jiang of Gojosian feel more at ease. Li Mu looked at Chu Jiang of Gojosian and said leisurely, I want you to work under me after you break through. Chu Jiang of Gojosian had a difficult look on his face as he said, but the Lord Sage. Li Mu waved his hand and said, as for Netherworld, this seat will naturally tell him. Do you think that Netherworld will fall out with this seat over a subordinate? Chu Jiang of Gojosian immediately said, I am willing to serve you. To him, the most important thing was to ascend to the 6th realm. As for whether he would have to submit to others after ascending, that would depend on who he was submitting to. The Nether Hell Sage was merely an ordinary 6th realm cultivator. Naturally, he wasn't willing to work under him. However, the Thousand Illusions Venerable Master would soon ascend to the Transcendence Realm. Being able to work for a Transcendence Realm cultivator was, on the contrary, an opportunity for him. Li Mu slowly walked towards the center of the county city and said, that evil spirit is suppressed under the state temple. This seat will teach you a formation. This formation can temporarily trap this spirit for an hour. After an hour, it will break free. At that time, it will be a headache for the North County government and the Fulu school. Chu Jiang of Gojosian clasped his fists and said, my lord, you are wise. Li Mu's tone changed. Although this formation is powerful, but, Chu Jiang of Gojosian hurriedly asked, but what? Li Mu said, but it will require the soul power of your subordinates. You won't be unwilling to part with it, right? Chu Jiang of Gojosian said without hesitation, I will do it now. He stretched out his palm, and a powerful suction force erupted from his palm. The nearby subordinates were torn apart by this suction force and flew towards Chu Jiang of Gojosian's palm. Amidst a series of screams, they turned into pure soul power and were absorbed into Chu Jiang of Gojosian's body. Li Mu looked at Chu Jiang of Gojosian with gratification and said, ruthless and decisive. Not bad. I admire you. Chu Jiang of Gojosian clasped his fists and said, thank you for your praise, my lord. I have also been influenced by you. Li Mu nodded and said, those who achieve great things must have a ruthless heart. On the path of cultivation, the weak are prey to the strong. Only the fittest survive. The big fish eat the small fish, and the small fish eat the shrimps. They can only blame themselves for being too weak. The weak have no right to choose. Chu Jiang of Gojosian no longer had any doubts about the identity of monk Qianhuan. He lowered his head and said, "I will remember." The two figures gradually walked away. In the Yin-Yen pavilion, Bai Tingxin's voice trembled as she asked softly, "Why is there no sound outside?" At the critical moment when Chu Jiang of Gojosian arrived, Li Mu suddenly appeared and pushed them into the shop. He closed the door and faced Chu Jiang of Gojosian alone. He was no match for Chu Jiang of Gojosian. The girls were prepared to die together. However, after a long time, there was still no sound from outside. Lu Hanyan finally could not help but open the shop door. She found that there was no one outside. Chu Jiang of Gojosian was gone. Li Mu was gone. Even the resentful spirits and evil spirits outside had all disappeared. There was no one on the street. Above their heads was the blood-red sky. Even the moonlight was dyed red. The entire county was shrouded in a layer of blood-red panic. In front of the royal temple, Chu Jiang of Gojosian's tall and imposing figure was busy in the open space in front of the royal temple. He followed Li Mu's instructions and drew crisscrossing trenches on the ground as formation patterns. He filled the formation patterns with the soul power of his subordinates. Then, he formed a seal with both hands. The formation patterns suddenly emitted a mysterious power. Chu Jiang of Gojosian sensed it carefully and confirmed that it was the power of a seal. He looked at Li Mu and asked carefully, "Sir, is this enough?" "Of course not." Li Mu looked at him indifferently and said, "A seventh realm evil spirit is still powerful even if it has been suppressed under the royal temple for hundreds of years. You are too naive if you want to suppress it with a small formation. Even if it can only seal it for an hour, it needs the help of a formation group." Several formations complemented each other and nested together. Its power is no less than the 18 Hell formation. Chu Jiang of Gojosian frowned and asked, "Will there not be enough time?" Li Mu said, "An hour is enough. After setting up the seal, you still have an hour to sacrifice these mortals." "Why, is an hour not enough?" Chu Jiang of Gojosian said, "Of course there is enough time. But after an hour, I'm afraid the strong cultivators from the North County will arrive." Li Mu looked up at the blood-red night sky and snorted. He said, "The 18 Hell formation was created by a talented elder of the demon sect hundreds of years ago. How can a few fifth realm cultivators break it? Moreover, I am here. What can they do?" Continue to set up the seal according to what I said. Not only was Thousand Illusions Venerable good at refining corpses, but he was also very proficient in formations. Li Mu casually chose a complicated formation and let Chu Jiang of Gojosian get busy first. Even if the White Demon King and Xuandu arrived, they wouldn't be able to break the 18 Hell formation in a short time. But now, Li Mu had no other choice. Chu Jiang of Gojosian carved the formation for a while. Suddenly, he looked up at Li Mu and asked, "I wonder how much of your cultivation has recovered. If the strong cultivators from the North County arrive, should I take care of you?" Li Mu knew that things were not good. Although he used the identity of Thousand Illusions Venerable to intimidate Chu Jiang of Gojosian for a while, as time passed, Chu Jiang of Gojosian's mind would calm down. The flaws in his body would gradually appear. After all, Li Mu was only in the spirit realm. He could pretend to be Thousand Illusions Venerable, but he couldn't pretend to be a strong cultivator. Faced with Chu Jiang of Gojosian's test, Li Mu's expression didn't change. Instead, he smiled mockingly and asked, "What? Are you testing me? If my cultivation hasn't reached Dongxian, are you going to use the 18 Hell formation to refine me?" Chu Jiang of Gojosian immediately lowered his head and said, "I wouldn't dare." He didn't doubt Thousand Illusions Venerable's identity, but after he gradually calmed down, he began to doubt his strength. Thousand Illusions Venerable was very strong. In just half a year, he was able to cultivate a part of his soul to the Dongxian realm. However, that part of his soul had long been killed by the Fulu school and Xuanzong's experts from Dongxian. The one standing in front of him now was just another part of Thousand Illusions' Venerable's soul after he possessed someone else's body. In the past 2 months, nothing major had happened in the northern region. It was impossible for him to cultivate this part of his soul to Dongxian in 2 months. If that was the case, wasn't this an opportunity for him? When Thousand Illusions' Venerable was at his weakest, he could devour him and obtain his memory inheritance. Then, through the 18 Hell formation, he could ascend to the 6th realm. After returning to the demon sect, he could replace Thousand Illusions' Venerable and become the new 10 Great Elders. After this thought emerged in his mind, he could no longer suppress it. It even made his hands tremble as he inscribed the formation. He didn't immediately make a move. A centipede dies but never falls down. Thousand Illusions' Venerable strength had been deeply engraved in his heart. Even if it was just a part of his soul that had yet to recover its strength, he didn't dare to underestimate it. He finished inscribing a new formation. According to Li Mu's instructions, after pouring in his soul power, he activated the formation with a trace of his Fa Li. After forming a seal with his hands, Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's eyes flashed a few times. Suddenly, his Fa Li increased by several times. A powerful shockwave spread out from the runes. Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's body stood firm. Li Mu's body was pushed back several steps by this impact. Chu Jiang of Gojoseon looked back at Li Mu and asked, "Lord Thousand Illusions, could it be that your Fa Li hasn't recovered to the middle 3 realms?" Li Mu smiled and said, "Why don't you give it a try?" Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's face was uncertain. The shadow that Thousand Illusions' Venerable had left on him was too great. Seeing Li Mu so calm, he didn't dare to act rashly. He bowed and said, "I was careless just now. Lord, please don't blame me." He still planned to set up the sealing formation first. Even if he could devour this seemingly weak Thousand Illusions, he wouldn't be able to completely refine his split soul in a short period of time. If the evil spirit underground was released, his 5 years of planning would be for naught. Half an hour passed quietly. Chu Jiang of Gojoseon activated the last formation. He looked at Li Mu again and asked, "Lord, is it done now?" The experts hadn't arrived yet. Li Mu was already a little anxious. He racked his brains to piece together this formation. The ground was already covered with formation patterns. Even if he wanted to set up another formation, there was no empty space. Forcefully using a formation to delay time would only make Chu Jiang of Gojoseon suspect his true purpose. Li Mu nodded and said, "It's done." Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's face revealed a trace of joy and said, "We can finally start the sacrifice." Li Mu hurriedly said, "Wait." Chu Jiang of Gojoseon asked, "Lord, is there anything else?" No matter what, he couldn't let Chu Jiang of Gojoseon sacrifice the people of the city. Li Mu thought for a moment and said, "Now is not the time. In the last quarter of the Yin hour, the Yin Qi in the world is the strongest. After that, it will change from extreme Yin to extreme Yang. At that time, the power of the 18 Yin prison formation will be at its strongest, 3/4 of an hour?" Chu Jiang of Gojoseon shook his head and said, "Things will change if we delay. The power of the formation is already enough. There's no need to wait until then, 3/4 of an hour, Lord Thousand Illusions." Chu Jiang of Gojoseon stared at Li Mu and said, "Since just now, you've been stalling for time. Are you waiting for someone or planning something?" Chapter 187. After being exposed by Chu Jiang of Gojoseon, although Li Mu was already a little flustered in his heart, he still had to maintain his calm on the surface. His face darkened as he asked, "You dare to doubt this king?" Of course this king does not dare to doubt Lord Xianhuan. Chu Jiang of Gojoseon took a few steps back, keeping a distance from Li Mu, and said, "But Lord Xianhuan's actions, this king cannot help but doubt. For this opportunity, I have been planning for 5 years. 5 years 5 years does Lord Xianhuan know how I have spent these 5 years?" Li Mu said coldly, "Impudent." A touch of madness appeared on Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's face as he gritted his teeth and said, "This king's plan, no one is allowed to destroy it, not even Lord Xianhuan." Chu Jiang of Gojosian did not doubt his identity as Lord Xianhuan, but he doubted his motives. He racked his brains and delayed Chu Jiang of Gojosian for an hour, which was already the limit. The obstruction just now had caused Chu Jiang of Gojosian to become suspicious. This was also something that could not be helped. After all, Li Mu could not watch Chu Jiang of Gojosian sacrifice the people of the county city. Chu Jiang of Gojosian had spent a lot of time and effort for today. Not to mention Lord Xianhuan, even if his own father tried to stop him, he would still fight with his life. Chu Jiang of Gojosian looked at Li Mu and suddenly grinned, asking, Lord Xianhuan's new body should still be in the lower realm, right? Li Mu said expressionlessly, you will know if you try, Lord Xianhuan, you don't have to pretend in front of this king anymore. Chu Jiang of Gojosian laughed mockingly and said, I can already see that you are only strong on the outside but weak on the inside. Who would have thought that the once high and mighty Lord Xianhuan would end up like this? Li Mu could tell that Chu Jiang of Gojosian no longer cared whether he was Venerable Master Thousand Illusions or not after he figured out his background. A mere third realm demon sect elder was no threat to him. The desire to ascend to the next level overcame his fear of Venerable Master Thousand Illusions. Chu Jiang of Gojosian looked at him and said, since you want this king to try, then this king will try. Above his head, the black mist suddenly condensed into two spears and shot towards Li Mu. Boom! Boom! Li Mu stood in place as two bolts of lightning descended from the sky and landed on the spear. The spear collapsed and turned back into black gas. Chu Jiang of Gojosian said calmly, this king would like to see what else you can do. He did not get close to Li Mu and only controlled his ghostly aura to attack from a distance. In the sky before Li Mu, lightning snakes danced wildly and neutralized all of Chu Jiang of Gojosian's attacks. He knew very well that Chu Jiang of Gojosian was still testing him due to his fear of Venerable Master Thousand Illusions. The dermic powers expended by these attacks were negligible to Chu Jiang of Gojosian. However, the frequent use of dermic powers caused Li Mu's dermic powers to be on the verge of being overdrawn. Not only that, but Li Mu also realized that the power of these lightning bolts was at least 30% weaker than usual in this 18 hellish hell formation. This was because a large portion of the power of heaven and earth was blocked by the blood-red formation above his head when he used his dermic powers. Heaven and earth are limitless, the universe borrows dermic powers. Dermic powers are born from the heart, and they multiply endlessly. Heavenly Lord Tai, as the law commands. He borrowed Madame Chu's dermic powers and used the demon-slaying protection spell again. The Bai sword turned into thousands of sword shadows and slashed towards Chu Jiang of Gojosian. Chu Jiang of Gojosian opened his arms and countless black mist burst out from his body. These sword shadows entered the black mist and disappeared without a trace. His figure walked out from the black fog, and he praised, as expected of Lord Thousand Illusions. Ordinary fourth-level bestial souls would have long been reduced to ashes under this ability. However, are you looking down on me, Lord? Li Mu was also helpless. His true cultivation was only at the beginning of the third level. Even if he gave it his all, he was no match for Chu Jiang of Gojosian, who was already at the 6th level. Moreover, the dermic powers that he had high hopes for were weakened by the 18 hellish hell formation and could not be used to their full potential. Li Mu was just intending to withdraw the high-grade Strider talisman to deal with King Chu Jiang when he suddenly had a flash of inspiration in his mind, and a thought gushed out into appearance. The reason why he could not use part of his dermic powers was not because he did not have enough dermic powers. It was because his body could not withstand the power of heaven and earth that those dermic powers summoned. With his current dermic powers, he could forcefully use the last few words of the 9 syllables mantra and the Book of Taoism. However, he would die from the backlash of the immense power of heaven and earth. However, in this 18 hellish hell formation, the power of heaven and earth that he summoned from his dermic powers would be weakened by this formation. When it landed on his body, it would not be so unbearable. Li Mu immediately made a hand seal and silently activated the swordsman word. The further back the 9 syllables mantra was, the greater the power of heaven and earth that it summoned. Li Mu originally still needed to cultivate for a few more months before he could withstand the power of heaven and earth. Now that he had recited it, he felt a wave of power of heaven and earth surge into his body, replenishing his almost depleted dermic powers. In the 9 syllables mantra, Lin referred to lightning, Bing referred to weapons, Do referred to battle, and swordsman referred to using the power of heaven and earth to recover dermic powers. When cultivators fought with others, they would expend their dermic powers. Whoever exhausted their dermic powers first would be the first to lose. To be able to fully recover one's dermic powers at any time was equivalent to having the ability to go on indefinitely. However, this technique was useless against Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. No matter how fast his dermic powers recovered, it would not exceed the 3rd level. However, this great formation of the 18 hells was a rare opportunity for Li Mu to comprehend Dao techniques. He quickly changed his hand seals and tried to comprehend the mantras that he had yet to learn. Chu Jiang of Gojoseon saw that Li Mu did not move from his original spot and became even more cautious. He thought of the terror of the 1,000 illusions venerable master and took a few steps back. 2 soul shadows walked out of his body and pounced towards Li Mu. The 2 soul shadows both had the aura of the peak of the 4th level. They each held 2 soul swords in their hands and slashed towards Li Mu's head. Li Mu's body was like a fish in water. He swam between the 2 soul shadows agilely. The 4 soul swords were swung in an airtight manner. However, they could not even touch the corner of Li Mu's clothes. The fighting mantra allowed Li Mu to predict the enemy's movements and react without thinking. He could only rely on his battle instincts. In the next moment, his body suddenly stopped. He allowed one of the soul swords to slash at his chest. That soul sword passed through Li Mu's body. Nothing happened to Li Mu's body. However, the green brick under his feet shattered. The wholeness mantra was a substitution technique. I am all things, and all things are me. It could divert a certain degree of damage. Li Mu retreated. His hand seals changed again. The 2 soul shadows that were charging towards him stopped strangely in midair. Then, they immediately collapsed. They were killed by a powerful force of the heaven and earth. The formation mantra was a trapping technique. It could trap the enemy and kill them with the power of the heaven and earth. The moment the 2 soul shadows disappeared, Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's body also disappeared. In the next moment, he appeared behind Li Mu. A ghostly hand passed through Li Mu's body and reached out from his chest. Li Mu turned his head and smiled slightly at Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. His body gradually became illusory and finally disappeared. Not far ahead, another Li Mu stood there, completely unharmed. The dequeuing mantra was a doppelganger technique. It could instantly create an illusory doppelganger. The original body and the doppelganger could shift positions and dodge fatal attacks. With the 18 nether prison formation blocking him, Li Mu was able to withstand the backlash of the heaven and earth power of the 7th word with his spirit condensation cultivation. He could forcefully use the 8th and 9th words, but he would definitely be injured. Chu Jiang of Gojoseon withdrew his hand. He looked at Li Mu from afar. His expression became extremely dark. This was the strongest and most troublesome spirit condensation cultivator he had ever encountered. His ability was no weaker than a cultivator who had just entered the 5th realm. As expected of the 1,000 illusions venerable, he had countless Dao techniques. Even if his cultivation had fallen to the 3rd realm, Chu Jiang of Gojoseon would not be able to do anything to him. Not only that, but the heaven and earth power that these Dao techniques used would pass through the 18 nether prison formation. The 18 ghostly generals had to bear the brunt of this heaven and earth power. In this short period of time, the 18 pillars of light had dimmed. The power of the formation had also been weakened by 10%. If this continued, the power of the formation would continue to weaken. Heaven and earth are boundless. Wind and thunder receive orders. Dragons fight in the wild. 10 sides are destroyed. Heavenly Lord Tai, as the law commands. Li Mu formed another seal with his hands. He was using the 2nd incantation of the Demon Slayer protective art. Wind and thunder suddenly appeared beside Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. The wind was green and seemed to want to blow his soul away. The thunder was purple and struck his body. Even with his strong soul, it did not feel good. However, this was clearly not enough to threaten him. He reached out and formed a steel fork in his hand. He laughed coldly. Lord Thousand Illusions, if this is all you have, then don't blame me for today. Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's body disappeared. At the same time, Li Mu also felt a strong sense of danger. He did not hesitate to take out a fulu and stick it on his body. A steel fork appeared in the void. However, Li Mu had already disappeared. All that was left was an afterimage. Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's body appeared. He looked at Li Mu in the distance with a solemn expression. In that moment, his speed had exceeded the limit of a assembled spirit cultivator. That was a speed that only Dongxian cultivators could achieve. Damn it. How many more Dao techniques does he have? He had never met such a troublesome assembled spirit cultivator. Chu Jiang of Gojoseon cursed in his heart. He held the steel fork and quickly chased after him. Li Mu stood on Bai as he utilized the Earth-rank Strider talisman to fly in the sky, whereas King Chu Jiang held the steel pitchfork in his hand as he pursued relentlessly from behind. Every time the distance between him and Li Mu shrunk, Li Mu would utilize the Strider talisman with all his might to pull the distance apart once more. The Spirit Travel Talisman could last for an hour. It was enough for Xuandu and the White Demon King to arrive. Chu Jiang of Gojoseon seemed to have seen through Li Mu's thoughts. He hovered in the air. After a while, he ignored him and landed on the square in front of the state temple. He glanced at Li Mu and prepared to sacrifice the people of the county to increase his cultivation. When he successfully advanced to the 6th stage of the Essence Soul Realm, no matter how mysterious the Thousand Illusions' divine ability was, he would definitely die. Li Mu stood in the sky and looked down at Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. It would take 5 minutes to activate the 18-in prison Great Formation. Just a moment ago, he had already thought of a countermeasure. Li Mu looked up at the blood-colored Great Formation. His heart was filled with a sense of security. He slowly landed on the ground and formed a seal with his hands. After muttering a few words, he broke into a run. In the center of the formation, Chu Jiang of Gojoseon was using all his strength to activate the 18-in prison Great Formation. Suddenly, he felt a strong sense of fear. He looked up and saw the 18 pillars of light rapidly dimming. The blood-colored Great Formation trembled violently for a moment and collapsed. Before he could activate the formation and sacrifice the people of the county, the Great Formation that he had spent so much effort to set up was gone. Chapter 188. Puff. Li Mu was halfway there when his body suddenly shook and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His aura weakened significantly. The power of heaven and earth was triggered because of him. In the end, he could not avoid the backlash. Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's 18-in prison formation helped him block most of the power of heaven and earth triggered by chanting the Tao Te Ching. Only a small part of it landed on him. Li Mu was much stronger than when he was possessed by the Thousand Illusions Venerable. Although the backlash of the Tao Te Ching still injured him, it was not enough to make him lose his ability to move. Li Mu looked up. The blood-red curtain had disappeared, and the 18 light pillars were nowhere to be seen. It seemed that even the 18-in prison formation could not withstand the power of heaven and earth triggered by the first 2 sentences of the Tao Te Ching. After months of constant testing, Li Mu found that only the first 2 sentences of the Tao Te Ching, which had more than 5,000 words, could trigger the power of heaven and earth. With his spirit convergence cultivation, he could not even recite half a sentence under normal circumstances. Just now, to prevent Chu Jiang of Gojoseon from sacrificing the people of the county city, Li Mu recited the first 2 sentences of the Tao Te Ching for the sake of safety. The 18-in prison formation, which could trap the powerhouses of Dongxian to death, only lasted for a short moment under the powerful power of heaven and earth before it collapsed. The remaining power of the backlash also seriously injured Li Mu. Fortunately, he had made rapid progress in the past 2 months. If it was 2 months ago, he would have died under the backlash. In front of the state temple, Chu Jiang of Gojoseon looked up at the sky with a dazed expression. The blood-red curtain of light was gone. He did not feel the aura of the 18 ghost generals, which meant that they had been wiped out together with the formation under the immense power of heaven and earth. His plan to reach the 6th realm had failed. 5 years of hard work had turned to dust. Chu Jiang of Gojoseon looked up to the sky and let out a long howl. This howl was full of unwillingness and extreme resentment. At the last moment when the formation was broken, he sensed the source of the power of heaven and earth. It was the little constable, the one possessed by the 1,000 illusions venerable master. There was no longer any fear of honored master 1,000 illusions in his heart. Instead, there was only a towering resentment. I want you dead. Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's body turned into a cloud of black mist and swept towards Li Mu. Li Mu's injuries were not light. He could no longer activate the Earth-rank Spirit Strider Talisman. The 18 prison Great Formation had been destroyed, and he could no longer use the Mantra Dao technique that he had just comprehended. As the black fog closed in, he mobilized all the magic power in his body and formed a seal with one hand. Just as he was preparing to fight to the death, a white shadow suddenly flew out from the side. It picked up Li Mu and quickly fled into the distance. Li Mu looked at Bai Yinxin, who had suddenly appeared. Without hesitation, he stuck the spirit travel talisman on her body and said, "Activate this talisman. He won't be able to catch up to you." As soon as he finished speaking, the two of them suddenly increased their speed. Whoosh! Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's face appeared in the black fog behind them. He threw out the steel fork in his hand. This object broke through the air and set off a series of sonic booms. It was even faster than the speed of the spirit travel talisman. The steel fork pierced into Bai Yinxin's shoulder from behind and collapsed into black fog. Bai Yinxin hugged Li Mu. Her body staggered and they both fell to the ground. Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's body arrived in an instant and then suddenly stopped. A strong and familiar pressure appeared above his head. Chu Jiang of Gojoseon was no stranger to this pressure. His 18 prison Great Formation had been destroyed by this pressure. He stared at Li Mu with a venomous gaze and gritted his teeth, forcefully using a Dao technique that you can't use yet. Without the obstruction of the Great Formation, you will also die. Li Mu stood in front of Bai Yinxin and said calmly, "Take a step forward and you will also die." Chu Jiang of Gojoseon said in a low voice, "You are not Lord Xianhuan." Li Mu said indifferently, "Xianhuan is already dead. I killed him." Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's heart churned. "Who exactly are you? You won't have the chance to know." Li Mu hugged the unconscious Bai Yinxin and retreated quickly. At the same time, a few powerful auras approached from behind. Feeling those auras, Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's expression changed drastically. He could no longer care about Li Mu and retreated quickly. The 18 prison Great Formation had been destroyed and he had failed to advance. If he met a few enemies of the same level, he would definitely die. A few figures landed beside Li Mu. An old man hurriedly asked, "How is the situation in the county?" Li Mu looked at the North County governor and said briefly, "The 18 prison Great Formation has been destroyed. There are no casualties among the people. Quickly chase after Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. Good boy, rest first. Wait for me to return." The old man heaved a sigh of relief and laughed loudly. Then, he chased after Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. Xuandu, Xiaoyu, and County Governor Chen did not say anything and left with the old man. The White Demon King looked at Bai Yinxin with concern and asked, "How is Yinxin?" Li Mu's right hand emitted a golden light and pressed it on Bai Yinxin's wound. He said, "Brother Bai, don't worry. I will take good care of her." The White Demon King nodded at him and disappeared on the spot. He chased after Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. County Governor Shen stayed on the spot and said in disbelief, "How was the 18 prison Great Formation broken? How did you stall Chu Jiang of Gojoseon for so long?" Li Mu said, "Now is not the time to talk about this. There are still some vengeful spirits and evil spirits in the county. Lord Shen, you have to get rid of them quickly and stabilize the people. The 18 Nether Prison Grand Formation needed to drive all the citizens of the city to the location of the 18 Ghost Generals. When the Grand Formation was activated, the blood essence and soul of those people would be extracted by the Grand Formation and used by King Chu Jiang, who was at the center of the formation. Li Mu had just tricked Chu Jiang of Gojoseon into personally killing most of the ghosts under him. There were still some ghosts left to drive the people away. The moment the 18 Prison Great Formation was destroyed, the 18 Ghost Generals' souls were scattered. In fact, even if it was a normal sacrifice, the final outcome of these 18 Spirit Realm ghosts was no different from the people who were sacrificed. At this moment, all the 5th Realm experts were chasing after Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. There needed to be someone in charge in the county. After County Governor Shen left, Li Mu used all his mana to heal Bai Yinshin's injuries. After the ghost fork that Chu Jiang of Gojoseon transformed into injured her, it also left a large amount of ghost chi in her body. Li Mu used all his mana to force out traces of black chi from her body. After a moment, Bai Yinshin's long eyelashes trembled and her eyes slowly opened. Li Mu had already used up his last bit of mana and collapsed to the ground. Bai Yinshin helped him up and asked with concern, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." Li Mu shook his head and asked, "How do you feel?" Bai Yinshin supported Li Mu with one hand and covered her shoulder with the other. She said, "I'm fine." "What did you say to Chu Jiang of Gojoseon?" "He didn't kill you back then, let's talk about it when we get back. Don't let them worry for too long." Bai Yinshin nodded. The two of them supported each other and stood up. They slowly walked towards the Yunyan Pavilion. Before they arrived, they saw a few figures running towards them anxiously. Bai Yinshin silently let go of Li Mu. Bai Tingshin's cultivation was the highest and she ran the fastest. She appeared in front of Li Mu almost instantly and jumped onto him. Just as her lips were about to land on Li Mu's face, Li Mu reached out his hand in time. She only kissed Li Mu's palm. Bai Yinshin pulled Bai Tingshin's ear and pulled her away from Li Mu. Li Mu walked in front of Lu Hanyan and said, "I'm sorry for making you guys worry." Li Mu felt his chest tighten. Lu Hanyan hugged him tightly. She hugged him very hard as if she wanted to fuse their bodies together. At this moment, Li Mu felt an emotion from Lu Hanyan for the first time. This emotion had no color, but it was more beautiful than the most beautiful color in Li Mu's eyes. He reached out and wiped away the tears in Lu Hanyan's eyes. He said, "Don't worry, it's fine." In the county city of North County, the 18 prison formation was broken. The bailiffs of the county government walked onto the streets to comfort the frightened people. Baiyin Mountain, the ancestral court of Fu Lu School. Late at night, a distant bell rang, waking up countless cultivators in the ancestral court of Fu Lu School. A few streams of light streaked across the sky and landed on the main peak. A few old men with white beards and hair stood in front of the Dao Bell. They looked at each other and were speechless. In front of the main hall of the main peak, a deep crack appeared on the Dao Bell that had been hanging there for an unknown number of years. Chapter 189. Half a year ago, the law bell, which had not rung for years, rang several times a day. After half a year of peace, another woman died with grievances. Before she died, her grievances resonated with the heavens and earth, giving birth to a new Dao technique, causing the law bell to ring again. Not long after, when the law bell rang again, a crack appeared on it. Such a thing had never happened before since the establishment of the Fu Lu school. An old man with white hair and a white beard stood in front of the cracked law bell. His gaze was deep, and he was silent. The head of the 5th branch, Hyun Jinko, walked forward and asked in a low voice, "Senior brother, the old man said slowly, "The sound of the law bell is related to the strength of the Dao technique. The stronger the new Dao technique, the louder the sound of the law bell. To be able to crack the law bell, I'm afraid that a powerful Dao technique has been born. It's the North region again." Hyun Jinko said with a serious expression, "I'm afraid this is not a coincidence." The old man looked at a woman in a palace dress and said, such a Dao technique will definitely cause a phenomenon in the North region. Junior sister, please go down the mountain and investigate the reason, North region, outside the city. 5 powerful auras surrounded Chu Jiang of Gojosian from 5 directions. The crown on Chu Jiang of Gojosian's head had already fallen off. His hair was disheveled, and his aura was extremely weak. Facing 5 experts of the same level, he had no chance of escaping. The North Region County Governor looked at him and said coldly, Chu Jiang of Gojosian, surrender. Chu Jiang of Gojosian panted heavily. He looked around and realized that all his escape routes had been sealed. He knew that he could not escape today. He looked up at everyone and said sternly, if it wasn't for that liar, do you think you can kill me with just trash like you? They were also well aware that if it weren't for Li Mu holding back Chu Jiang of Gojosian, Chu Jiang of Gojosian would probably have already sacrificed all the citizens of the city and advanced to the 6th realm. At this moment, the roles of hunter and prey would have completely reversed. Until now, they still didn't know how Li Mu, a mere 3rd realm cultivator, managed to hold off Chu Jiang of Gojosian for as long as an hour, and how he managed to break the Great 18 hellish prison formation. The White Demon King looked at Chu Jiang of Gojosian and said indifferently, unfortunately, there are no ifs. The North County Governor said, everyone, attack with all your might and kill this fiend. 5 auras soared into the sky. Chu Jiang of Gojosian stood in the middle, laughing towards the sky. No one can kill this king. Yu Ming can't, 1,000 illusions can't, and trash like you can't either. As soon as his voice fell, a strong aura fluctuation suddenly came from his body. The North County Governor's expression changed drastically, and he immediately said, retreat. Everyone quickly retreated. A powerful destructive force erupted from Chu Jiang of Gojosian's position, destroying all life within a radius of several thousand feet. County City. Li Mu and Bai Yinshin were both quite injured. Lu Hanyan and Wan Wan supported Li Mu on both sides, while Xiao Bai and Bai Tingxin supported Bai Yinshin as they returned to their residence. Li Mu lay on the bed, while Lu Hanyan sat at the head of the bed. She didn't say a word as she silently wept. This was the first time Li Mu saw her cry. He held Lu Hanyan's hand and comforted her. Don't be sad. I'm fine now. Lu Hanyan wiped her tears and sobbed. If something happened to you, what would Wan Wan and I do? Li Mu looked at her and asked seriously, do you want me to abandon you and run away alone? He pulled Lu Hanyan into his arms and said, have some confidence in your man, okay? A mere Chu Jiang of Gojosian is nothing. Master Qinhuan is more powerful than him, right? In the end, he still fell into my hands. Lu Hanyan leaned against his chest and gently pounded it. You're still trying to be brave at this time. Li Mu looked at her tear-stained face and kissed her gently. Believe me, I won't let anyone hurt you. Lu Hanyan did not respond to Li Mu with words. She used her lips to kiss Li Mu's lips. Cough. Bai Tingxin coughed at the door. Lu Hanyan hurriedly got up from Li Mu's body. In front of outsiders, she was still a little shy. She awkwardly wiped her lips and said, I'll go see Miss Yinshin. Li Mu glared at Bai Tingxin. It was not easy for Lu Hanyan to take the initiative and be so enthusiastic, but this snake ruined the atmosphere. Bai Tingxin looked back and saw that Lu Hanyan had gone far away. She jumped on the bed and threw herself on Li Mu, kissing his face incessantly. Shut up. Li Mu mustered his strength and pinched her mouth. He said in shock, are you crazy? Bai Tingxin sat on top of him and snorted. At that time, I swore that I would marry anyone who could save me. You saved me and my sister from Chu Jiang of Gojosian. I want to marry you, nonsense. Li Mu glared at her and said, did you ask me? Did you ask your aunt? Bai Tingxin said, I can be the concubine. Li Mu said angrily, I'm your uncle. What you're doing is incest. Get off me. Bai Tingxin giggled. I'm not getting off. This snake was really crazy. Li Mu felt a few familiar breaths approaching quickly. He said, your father is here. Get off quickly. Bai Tingxin pouted. Don't try to lie to me. I'm not getting off, Tingxin. A majestic voice came from behind. Her body trembled and she immediately jumped off the bed. She stood obediently in the corner and bowed her head. Father. The White Demon King and Xuandu walked in quickly. They asked with concern, "Third brother, are you okay?" "Don't worry, I won't die." Li Mu smiled and asked, "Where's Chu Jiang of Gojosian?" County Minister Chen said, Chu Jiang of Gojosian knew that he was no match for him, so he self-destructed his soul. It's a pity that Lord Chen won't have the chance to take revenge personally. Li Mu looked at the White Demon King. The White Demon King knew what he was going to say. He smiled and said, "I've already collected the remaining soul power of Chu Jiang of Gojosian and the 18 ghost generals." County Governor Lin walked forward and said to Li Mu, "You deserve the most credit for North County being able to avoid this calamity. I will personally write a letter to the Imperial Court and ask for a reward for you." Li Mu smiled and said, "As officials of Great Zhou, our duty is to protect the people. This is what we should do." "How did you stall Chu Jiang of Gojosian tonight?" County Governor Lin finally asked the question in his heart. It was also the question in everyone's heart. Li Mu had already thought of an explanation. He said, "I lied to him and said that there was a level 7 ominous ghost suppressed under the state temple in the county city. If Chu Jiang of Gojosian sacrificed the people of the county city, the ominous ghost would break out of the seal. At that time, even if he reached level 6, he would still be devoured by the ominous ghost and die." Everyone was shocked. They could not understand why Chu Jiang of Gojosian would believe Li Mu so easily. Li Mu knew their doubts and continued, "He didn't believe me at first. Later, I pretended to be Monk Qianhuan, and Chu Jiang of Gojosian no longer suspected me. I lied to him and spent an hour preparing the array to suppress the ominous ghost. That was how I managed to stall him until you all arrived." County Governor Chen was stunned. He said, "You pretended to be Monk Qianhuan?" Li Mu nodded and said, "When I was in Yangqiu County, a wisp of Monk Qianhuan's remnant soul wanted to possess me. Fortunately, a senior master came to my rescue and destroyed Monk Qianhuan's remnant soul. I also obtained some of his remnant memories. In these memories, there were old stories about Chu Jiang of Gojosian. I used these to deceive him." Li Mu's words were half true and half false. He had a pure young body. When he was in Yangqiu County, Monk Qianhuan had a deep relationship with him. Combined with Li Mu's testimony last time, it was not difficult to explain this matter. Obviously, both County Governor Chen and County Governor Lin were very familiar with the incident of Monk Qianhuan a few months ago. Both of them also knew that Li Mu had a pure young body. Monk Qianhuan had once attacked him, but he was saved by a master whose Taoist name was Laozi. All these were recorded in the case file. County Governor Lin praised, "It's really rare to have such astuteness at such a critical moment." He asked again, "You also broke the 18 hellish prison formation, right?" Li Mu did not deny it. He said, "At that time, Chu Jiang of Gojosian was ready to sacrifice all the people in the county. If I didn't break the formation, tens of thousands of people in the county would have become the sacrifices of Chu Jiang of Gojosian. In a hurry, I had to curse the sky with the incantation of truth. I used the force of heaven and earth to break the formation. Actually, most of my injuries were caused by the backlash of the force of heaven and earth. If it were not for the 18 hellish prison formation, I'm afraid I would have been killed by the force of heaven and earth." County Governor Chen was stunned and said in astonishment, "Is that possible?" Li Mu said helplessly, "At that time, the situation was urgent and I had no other choice but to take the risk. Fortunately, I succeeded," County Governor Chen said curiously, "Although the force of heaven and earth is powerful, it is not easy to activate it. Does heaven have a special favor for you?" In a sense, Li Mu was indeed favored by heaven. Every time he recited the Tao Te Ching, heaven wanted him to die on the spot. Li Mu looked at Xiaoyu behind Xuandu and said, "Actually, I was also inspired by Xiaoyu's incident." Xiaoyu looked at Li Mu quietly and did not say anything. Chapter 190. The county governor and the county lieutenant left first. Chu Jiang of Gojoseon had caused a great commotion in the county city tonight. They needed to calm the people down. Xuandu and the White Demon King also left temporarily. Before they left, they transferred a trace of mana into Li Mu's body to heal his injuries. When Xiaoyu left, she winked at Li Mu, meaning that she would not expose him. Only she and Li Mu knew that the power of heaven and earth activated by that Taoist technique was not enough to break the 18-in prison formation. However, the Tao Te Ching was Li Mu's biggest trump card. He had relied on it to safely survive 2 fatal situations. It was absolutely impossible for him to show it to others. Although there were some flaws in the half-true and half-false reason he made up, others could not verify it at all. After returning to the county office, County Governor Chen let out a long sigh of relief and said, "That was close. The best thing we've done recently was to transfer Li Mu to the county office. If it wasn't for his quick wit to break the formation by cursing the heavens and stopping Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's plot and saving the people of the city, how can the 2 of us face His Majesty and the people of the North County after tonight?" County Governor Lin looked at him and asked, "Lord Chen, do you really believe that Li Mu broke Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's 18-in prison formation by cursing the heavens?" County Governor Chen smiled and said, "Everyone has their secrets. The crisis of the county city has been resolved. Is it important how he broke the formation?" The 2 of them looked at each other and smiled. County Governor Lin said, "Whether Lord Chen believes it or not, I believe it." County Governor Chen laughed and said, "I believe it too. Tonight in the county city of the North County, whether it was the government or the people, it was a sleepless night. The blood-red sky and the wandering evil spirits made countless people tremble in fear when they thought of it. No one knew exactly what had happened. They only vaguely heard from the officials that there was a demonic Tao cultivator who wanted to sacrifice the common people of the county city. In the end, he was stopped by the officials and his plan failed. All the common people of the county city were able to escape this calamity. Currently, the demonic Tao ferocious ghost had been annihilated by the combined efforts of the county governor and the county deputy. The lives of the commoners in the city were no longer in danger. Li Mu climbed up from the bed. The magic power in his body had already recovered a little. Only a few people knew the truth about what happened tonight. The North County official would not spread the news that he had stopped Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's plot and saved the people of the county. This was to protect him. Otherwise, Li Mu would become an important target of the demon sect in the coming days. He walked out of the room and wanted to see Bai Yinxin, but he found out that Bai Yinxin and her sister had been taken away by the White Demon King. Bai Yinxin had saved Li Mu at the critical moment and was injured because of Li Mu. Including the previous misunderstanding, this was the 2nd time she had been seriously injured because of Li Mu. This made Li Mu feel guilty. He wanted to treat her again, but she had already left. It was late at night and the moonlight was bright. In the courtyard, no one was sleepy. Li Mu hugged Xiao Bai, who had transformed into her original form. Lu Hanyan and Wanwan held his arms on both sides. They sat in the courtyard and looked at the moon above their heads. Lu Hanyan leaned her head on Li Mu's shoulder and suddenly said, "Are we too weak?" At the critical moment, "We can't help you at all." Li Mu shook his head and said, "The enemy is too strong." The cultivation world was very cruel. The enemies of the soul refinement realm were rarely in the soul refinement realm. Most of the time, the cultivators of the soul refinement realm would have to face experts with the divine ability. Even ordinary people could be involved in the schemes of the creation realm or Dongxian cultivators and die an unjust death. In the past half a year, Li Mu had seen too many such things. The words of the 1,000 illusions venerable master actually made sense. In this world, the weak had no right to choose. Lu Hanyan's cultivation was actually not weak. She was already comparable to Han Zhe and the other disciples of the sect. It was just that she had met Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. Not to mention her, even the North County government, which had 2 creation realm experts, had almost fallen into the hands of Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. Li Mu patted her shoulder and comforted her, "Don't think too much. Go to bed early." Last night, they went to bed very late. Lu Hanyan and Wanwan did not sleep well, but Li Mu slept very soundly. The double overdraft of his mental and physical strength made him sleep until noon. After waking up, he felt refreshed. Although the injuries in his body were still not light, he just needed to rest and recuperate. Lu Hanyan went out with the basket and soon came back. The basket was empty. She said with some distress, "There is no one on the street. The shops are closed, and there is no one selling vegetables in the market." After what had happened last night, although there were no actual casualties, most of the people were still in shock. It would take at least a few days for the order in the city to be restored. When Li Mu went out, he saw that all the shops were closed. Just as Lu Hanyan had said, there were not many pedestrians on the originally bustling street. The people who lived in the prefecture city had lived a peaceful life. This was probably the first time they had encountered such a situation. The Great Zhou only had 36 prefectures. Chu Jiang of Gojouzian dared to target a prefecture city, right under the nose of the ancestral court of Fu Lu School. He was truly audacious. Perhaps it was because of the importance of the prefecture city that no one had guessed that he would choose the prefecture city. Chu Jiang of Gojouzian did the opposite. Once he successfully advanced, even the Fu Lu School would not be able to catch him so easily. Li Mu walked along the street and headed toward the prefecture government. A woman dressed in palace attire was walking on the empty street. She stopped a passerby and asked, "What happened here? Why are all the shops along the street closed?" "There is no one on the street, I don't know." The passerby remembered what had happened last night. Their faces were filled with fear. After shaking their heads, they quickly left. The woman in palace attire looked around in confusion. She counted with her fingers and muttered, "The power of heaven and earth is in chaos. I can't calculate anything. It seems that the source of the crack in the Dao bell is here." After walking for a while, she met another passerby. She went up and stopped him. She asked, "May I ask what happened in the prefecture city? Why is the city like this?" The woman in palace attire in front of him was clearly someone from the Fu Lu School. On the left breast of her palace dress, there was a mysterious seal. This was the seal of the Fu Lu School. It seemed that what had happened last night had already alerted the Fu Lu School. Even if Li Mu did not tell her, she would have been able to find out from the prefecture government. Li Mu could not see through this woman's cultivation at all. This meant that she was at least a creation realm expert. Li Mu coughed softly and said, "Senior, one of the 10 kings of hell under the nether saint of the demon sect, Chu Jiang of Gojouzian, set up the 18 hellish prison formation in the prefecture city last night. He wanted to sacrifice the people of the prefecture city to advance to the 6th realm. The people of the prefecture city were disturbed by Chu Jiang of Gojouzian last night, which is why they are so panicked. The 18 hellish prison formation." The woman in palace attire was shocked. She asked, "The 18 hellish prison formation requires 18 spirit realm ghost cultivators to set it up. Once the formation is successfully set up, it can trap Dongxian to death. Did someone set up the 18 hellish prison formation last night?" Li Mu nodded and said, "The situation in the prefecture city was very dangerous last night. The people of the prefecture city were almost sacrificed by Chu Jiang of Gojouzian." The woman in palace attire had a look of disbelief. She said, "If someone really set up the 18 hellish prison formation, it would be impossible to break it without at least 2 Dongxian experts. How did the prefecture government break this formation?" Li Mu said slowly, "I have to mention that nameless hero." After a while, the woman in palace attire had already heard about the situation in the prefecture city from Li Mu. She took out a fulu and handed it to Li Mu. She said, "Thank you for your explanation. This fulu is for you." Li Mu took the fulu and his eyes lit up. It was an earth-rank fulu. Judging from the runes on it, it was an earth-rank sword talisman. Although it looked only at the low-grade earth rank, it could kill anyone below the fate realm with one strike. The fulu was not very useful to Li Mu. He could give it to Lu Hanyan to protect herself. She was indeed a master of the Fu Lu School. She was much more generous than the prefecture government. Li Mu wanted to thank her, but when he looked up, the woman in palace attire had disappeared. Li Mu put away the fulu happily and saw Li Si and Chen Miaomiao walking over hand in hand. Li Si stepped forward and asked, I heard from my father-in-law that you were injured. Are you okay? Li Mu said, it's just a small injury. It's nothing serious. County Minister Chen clearly did not reveal anything to Li Si. The three of them walked all the way to the prefecture government. Before they stepped in, they heard a conversation in the courtyard. In the front yard of the prefecture government, County Governor Lin bowed to the woman in palace attire and said, Greetings, Daoist Yuzenzi. The woman in palace attire smiled and said, Long time no see, County Governor. After exchanging pleasantries, County Governor Lin asked, May I know why Daoist Yuzenzi is here? The woman in palace attire said, I heard about what happened in the prefecture capital last night. This time, I came down the mountain on the orders of Senior Brother Sect Master for this matter. County Governor Lin sighed and said, Sect Master's Daoist Dharma is profound. He was far away at Baiyun Mountain, but he could still predict what happened in the North County. That's not the case. The woman in palace attire shook her head and said, Yesterday, a new Daoist technique was born in the North County and caused the Dao bell to crack. This time, I came down the mountain because of the damage to the Dao bell. Now it seems that the damage to the Dao bell on the main peak of Baiyun Mountain should be related to what happened in the prefecture capital last night. Li Si stood at the entrance of the prefecture government. He turned to look at Li Mu and asked, Why are you standing outside? Aren't you going in? Li Mu squeezed out a smile and said, You go in first. I suddenly remembered that I came out to buy groceries. I'll go buy groceries first. Chapter 191. Li Mu had once heard from Li Qing that there was a Dao bell on the main peak of Mount Baiyun. This Dao bell was an important treasure of Fulu School. It had been there since the founding of Fulu School. Whenever a new Dao technique was created, it would draw upon the power of heaven and earth. No matter how far away it was, the Dao bell could sense it. He learned from Li Qing that more than half a year ago, when Li Mu courted death by experimenting with Dao techniques in Yangqiu County, the Dao bell rang incessantly on the main peak of Mount Baiyun. Now, it had cracked. Li Mu's Dao bell had cracked as well. The value of Fulu School's Dao bell was immeasurable. Even if Li Mu was sold, he would not be able to afford it. He did not know if the imperial court would take responsibility. After all, Li Mu had not intentionally damaged it. He had done it for the sake of the tens of thousands of people in the county capital. If Mount Baiyun was a little reasonable, it would not make him pay. If the imperial court had a shred of morality, it would not make a hero bleed and spend money. How powerful was Fulu School? They could hide for a while, but not forever. Li Mu turned around and walked 2 steps before turning back. County Governor Lin saw Li Mu walk in and said to the woman, The destruction of your Dao bell was caused by the power of heaven and earth. You can't blame anyone else, right? The woman said, County Governor, you misunderstand. This humble Daoist did not descend the mountain to pursue the matter. This humble Daoist was ordered by the sect master to understand the whole story. Hearing that he did not need to pay for the Dao bell, Li Mu heaved a sigh of relief. I see. County Governor Lin smiled and pointed at Li Mu. He said to the woman, Since Daoist Yuzhen wants to understand the whole story of yesterday's matter, you should ask Li Mu directly. The woman turned around and said in surprise, It's you? Li Mu bowed and said, Greetings, Senior Yuzhen. Yuzhen counted with his fingers and said in surprise, So you are that nameless hero? Li Mu said in shame, I dare not. Yuzhen asked, Was it you who broke the 18 nether prison grate array? Li Mu cleared his throat and repeated what he said last night. Yuzhen thought for a moment and said, This poor Daoist remembers now. Last time, the one who pointed at the sky and cursed and taught a peerless evil spirit that slaughtered a county magistrate's entire family was also you, right? Li Mu, this junior is ashamed. You don't have to feel ashamed. Yuzhen Zi looked at him a few more times and said, Since ancient times, there have been many people who have cursed the heavens and complained about the earth. However, you are the first one who has cursed the heavens to this extent. Li Mu was slightly delighted. It seemed that this Daoist Xianxia was quite easy to fool. However, in the next moment, the woman's tone changed. She said, although the heavenly Tao has a spirit, other than being activated by Daoist techniques, even if a cultivator points at the sky and curses, they rarely receive a response, let alone activating the power of the world that can destroy the 18-yin prison formation. County Governor Lin raised his eyebrows and asked, Daoist Xianxia, do you not believe me? Xianxia said, unless he proves it again, it will be very difficult for others to believe. If he could prove it in front of Xianxia and County Governor Lin, then no one would doubt the matter of him breaking Chu Jiang of Gojosian's formation. Li Mu thought for a moment and said, proving it is not difficult. However, without the obstruction of the 18-yin prison great array, this junior cannot bear the backlash of the power of the world alone. Xianxia said, you can prove it to me. I will protect you. She threw out a bronze bell. The bronze bell spun a few times and turned into a giant bell. It floated above Li Mu's head and emitted a faint golden light that enveloped Li Mu. Li Mu looked up. This giant bell gave him a sense of security that was not inferior to Chu Jiang of Gojosian's great array. This woman in palatial attire was most likely a Dongxian expert of F. Lu school. County Governor Lin took a step forward and said, Daoist Xianxia is the head of Baiyun Peak. His cultivation has already reached the peak of Dongxian. If it is convenient for you to prove it, feel free to give it a try. If it is not convenient, I believe Daoist Xianxia will not make things difficult for a junior like you. Baiyun Peak was the first lineage of F. Lu school. Li Mu had guessed that this woman in palatial attire was very strong. However, he did not expect her to be an expert on the same level as Venerable Thousand Illusions. Xianxia looked at Li Mu and said, this bell is a heaven-ranked magic treasure. It can withstand a strike from a transcendent expert. You can be at ease. This was a chance for him to dispel everyone's suspicions. Li Mu naturally would not let it go so easily. He thought for a moment. He formed a seal with one hand in his sleeve and pointed to the sky with the other. He said loudly, Earth, you do not distinguish good from bad. What is earth? Heaven, you are wrong to judge the virtuous and foolish to be the heaven. At the same time, he used a forbidden technique in his heart to recite, the Tao can be the Tao, but it is not the eternal Tao. Buzz, just as he finished speaking, the sound of a bell rang in Li Mu's ears. The loud sound of the bell caused his scalp to go numb. A not very strong energy surged into his body. Li Mu's injuries hadn't healed yet, so he coughed up another mouthful of blood. He wiped the corner of his mouth and looked at Xianxia with a bitter expression. What happened to being at ease? Xianxia was also stunned. She looked at the deep crack on the giant bell and a pained expression appeared on her face. However, she quickly came to her senses and put away the giant bell. She walked forward and held Li Mu's wrist. Li Mu felt a gentle force surging into his body. The injuries in his body rapidly improved under this force and soon, he was completely healed. He was still worried that she would be angry if her bell was broken. Now, it seemed that this Daoist Xianxia was a reasonable person. Xianxia let go of his hand and said in shock, how can this be? Why can you trigger such a powerful force of heaven and earth? This should not be, Li Mu shrugged and said, I don't know either. Could this be the blessing of the heavens? Xianxia looked at him with a strange expression. Pure yang, pure yin, 5 elements physique, innate spirit eyes, and the ability to control fire and water. This was the true blessing of the heavens. People with these physiques were born with extraordinary cultivation talent. When they cultivated, they would achieve twice the results with half the effort. As long as one pointed to the sky and cursed, it would attract such a powerful force of heaven and earth. What kind of blessing was this? This was not the blessing of the heavens, but the wrath of the heavens. No one would hope to receive such a blessing. However, this seemingly useless ability had saved tens of thousands of people in the northern county. Such a powerful force of heaven and earth could directly destroy the 18-yin prison array from the outside and interrupt the ghost cultivator's sacrifice. Otherwise, even if there were cultivators from Dongxian present, they would not be able to change the outcome of tens of thousands of people being sacrificed. In the unseen world, everything seemed to be destined. County Chief Lin did not believe it at first, but when he saw this scene, he was stunned on the spot for a long time. He muttered, could it be that he was targeted by the heavens because he cursed the heavens? This doesn't make sense. Yu was puzzled. The same Dao technique was used by the evil spirit with incomparable power. As the creator, he was punished by the heavens. Could it be that he is the person punished by the heavens? The physique of the heavens, Li Mu looked indifferent. As long as this matter could be resolved, he would accept that he was the person punished by the heavens. Yu and County Chief Lin were puzzled, but Li Mu was depressed. There were countless experts in the Lu school and so many experts in the imperial court. However, be it Venerable Master Thousand Illusions' plan or Chu Jiang of Gojosian's plot, they were all resolved by him, a mere cultivator in the lower three realms. What made him most unhappy was that after resolving these matters, he still needed to come up with a reasonable explanation and prove to everyone. Lu Hanyan walked in from outside and looked at Li Mu. She said unhappily, your body hasn't recovered yet, why are you out again? Yu Zhenzi and the county chief only cared about how he broke Chu Jiang of Gojosian's array. Only Lu Hanyan cared about his body. Li Mu held her hand and said, let's go home. Lu Hanyan was held by Li Mu. When they were about to walk out of the county office, she turned back to look at Yu Zhenzi. Yu Zhenzi also turned his head and looked at Lu Hanyan with a puzzled gaze. Wait. Yu Zhenzi suddenly spoke. Li Mu stopped and asked, Senior, is there anything else? Yu Zhenzi walked forward and sized up Lu Hanyan. Lu Hanyan also sized up Yu Zhenzi. The woman in palatial attire in front of her gave her a very amiable feeling. Yu Zhenzi seemed to realize something as a hint of joy appeared on his face. He asked, you have a purine body? Chapter 192. Lu Hanyan's expression changed slightly when the woman in palace attire saw through her constitution. She hid behind Li Mu. Li Mu's expression was strange. He was now clear that apart from the earth element, the other 6 types of physiques did not have any obvious characteristics. Even the experts of Dongxian would not be able to see through them at a glance. Even with the strength of Master Qianhuan, he still needed to go undercover in the county government and check the household register to find them. People's hearts were sinister. The purine body could not be known to outsiders. However, this expert of Fulu school did not want Li Mu to pay for the broken bell, so it was impossible for him to have any thoughts about Lu Hanyan. Li Mu introduced to Lu Hanyan, don't worry, this is Daoist Yu Zhenzi of Fulu school, a peak expert of Dongxian. He won't do anything to you. Lu Hanyan then bowed to Yu Zhenzi and said, greetings, Daoist Yu Zhenzi. Yu Zhenzi stepped forward and gently held Lu Hanyan's wrist. With a happy expression, he said, you are indeed a purine body. Are you willing to enter Fulu school and cultivate with me? Li Mu shielded Lu Hanyan behind him and said, we appreciate Senior's kindness. She is my fiancée and has no plans to enter any sect. Yu Zhenzi's gaze swept over Li Mu and finally looked at Lu Hanyan. He said, you should be able to sense that I am the same as you, a purine body. With your physique, ordinary Daoist techniques can only speed up your cultivation by several times. If you are willing to inherit my mantle and cultivate a purine cultivation method, you can enter the middle 3 realms within a year. Within 10 years, there is hope for good fortune. Yu Zhenzi handed a jade stone to Lu Hanyan and said, I will wait for you for 3 days. Within these 3 days, no matter what decision you make, as long as you crush this spiritual jade, I will come to find you. After Li Mu thanked Yu Zhenzi, he took Lu Hanyan and left. When they began their true dual cultivation, it would not be difficult for both of them to enter the divine powers realm within a year. Although in the middle 3 realms, each advancement would take decades, and if one's aptitude was not good, they would be stuck at the divine powers realm for the rest of their lives. However, with their physique, they could absorb spiritual jades during the day and cultivate yin and yang dual cultivation for 10 years. In the county government office, County Governor Lin asked, Daoist, do you want to accept a disciple? Yu Zhenzi looked in the direction that Lu Hanyan had left in and said, pure yang is easy to find but pure yin is hard to find. Those foolish women and men who gave birth to pure yin girls would think that they were ominous people and would either abandon them or drown them. Those who were lucky enough to survive would easily die young. It is extremely difficult to meet a successor. When Li Mu and Lu Hanyan returned home, Xuandu was sitting in the courtyard. He stood up and said, I will return to the Jinshan temple first. When third brother's injuries are healed, you can come to the Jinshan temple to find me. After Chu Jiang of Gojoseon self-destructed, his spiritual sense had dissipated. Only his remaining soul force had been collected by the White Demon King. The moment the 18 prison array was broken, the 18 ghost generals had been wiped away by the power of heaven and earth, leaving only their soul force. Li Mu said, why don't we go to Brother Bai's place now? Xuandu shook his head. But your injuries, Li Mu smiled and said, I just met Daoist Yu Zhenzi at the county government office. She has already completely healed my injuries. Xuandu was stunned and asked, Daoist Yu Zhenzi of Fulu School? Li Mu asked, second brother, do you know her? Of course. Xuandu nodded and said, 50 years ago, Daoist Yu Zhenzi was already famous in the cultivation world. She is proficient in Fulu and her Daoist techniques are profound. One of the original 10 elders of the demon sect died in her hands. Her cultivation has already reached the peak of Dongxian and is only a step away from transcending. Li Mu knew that Yu Zhenzi's cultivation was so high that her actual age was definitely not as young as she looked. However, he did not expect that she had already dominated the cultivation world 50 years ago. Now, if she was not 80 years old, she was at least 100 years old. Xuandu put a hand on Li Mu's shoulder and checked his injuries. He found that his injuries were indeed healed. He nodded and said with a smile, in that case, let's go find Brother Bai as soon as possible. He has already waited for nearly 20 years. We can't let him wait any longer. Xiaoyu also stayed in the prefecture city for the time being. Li Mu said to Lu Hanyan, I'll go to Brother Bai's place first. I'll be back tomorrow at the latest. Lu Hanyan nodded and said, I'll wait for you at home. Li Mu and Xuandu left. Lu Hanyan walked back to her room and sat in front of the table. Her eyes gradually lost focus. When Chu Jiang of Gojoseon arrived last night, a deep sense of powerlessness emerged in her heart again. At that time, she could only watch as Chu Jiang of Gojoseon captured by Yinxin and her sister. When Li Mu faced Chu Jiang of Gojoseon alone, she could only hide in the shop and worry for Li Mu. Other than that, she could do nothing. She was silent for a moment and stretched out her hand. A piece of spiritual jade lay quietly in her palm. North County, a nameless mountain. Inside the ice cave, Xuandu placed his hand on Li Mu's shoulder. Li Mu's forehead was covered in sweat. He channeled his magic power with all his might and sent the golden light into the ice coffin. This ice coffin resisted the Buddhist light, but it did not resist soul power. The moment the White Demon King took out the soul power of Chu Jiang of Gojoseon and the 18 ghost generals, it was sucked into the coffin. The soul power was gradually absorbed by the woman in the ice coffin. Her originally extremely pale face gradually recovered a trace of redness. Bai Yinxin stood beside Li Mu. She took out a white handkerchief from her bosom and carefully wiped the sweat off his forehead. Bai Tingxin took a look and also took out a green handkerchief to help him wipe off the sweat on his temples. The woman in the coffin was actively absorbing the ownerless soul power. As her soul became more and more solid, the Buddhist light's effect became greater and greater. The White Demon King looked at the woman's face in the coffin with an extremely nervous expression. The woman's eyelashes trembled. Finally, at a certain moment, she slowly opened her eyes. The White Demon King said excitedly, the lid of the ice coffin slowly opened. The woman sat up in the coffin. The blankness in her eyes gradually disappeared. She slowly looked at the White Demon King and muttered, Husband. Li Mu and Xuandu left the ice cave at the right time. A moment later, a few figures walked out of the cave. The woman with 2 horns on her head bowed to Li Mu and Xuandu and said, "Greetings, uncles." Xuandu only smiled. Li Mu also smiled and said, "We're all brothers. Sister-in-law, there's no need to be so polite." The White Demon King smiled and said, "If it weren't for second brother and third brother, and I probably wouldn't have been able to meet again. You must accept this bow from us, husband and wife." The 2 of them held hands and bowed to Li Mu and Xuandu. The White Demon King then said to the Bai sisters, "You should also thank the 2 uncles." The 2 sisters could only bow and say, "Thank you, uncles." Li Mu raised his hands and said with a smile, "Congratulations on your family's reunion, big brother. It's all thanks to you." The White Demon King smiled and said, "Today is a great day. Let us drink to our heart's content." Although Li Mu's magic power increased quickly, his alcohol tolerance was still average. After drinking a few cups with the green ox spirit and tiger spirit, he felt a little dizzy. This was not an ordinary wine. It contained spiritual energy. Drinking it could increase one's magic power, but it could not be used to sober up. Bai Tingxin ran over from the side and filled Li Mu's cup. Li Mu waved his hand and said, "I can't drink anymore." Bai Tingxin raised the cup and brought it to Li Mu's mouth and said, "This wine was brewed by Uncle Ho using spirit fruits. Drinking it can increase your magic power. Drink more, drink more." Not long after, Li Mu lay motionless on the table. Bai Tingxin helped Li Mu up and said to the White Demon King, "Father, Uncle Li Mu is drunk. I'll take him to rest." The White Demon King waved his hand and said, "Third brother's alcohol tolerance is really hard to explain." Go. A devious smile appeared on Bai Tingxin's face. She carried Li Mu and walked into a bamboo house. She placed Li Mu on a bed with a green gauze curtain. She lowered her head and looked at him. She felt that his face was handsome no matter how she looked at it. It was not easy to get him drunk. This time, there was no one around, so she could do whatever she wanted. Bai Tingxin pouted and moved closer to Li Mu's mouth. She suddenly felt pain in her ear. She turned around and looked at Bai Yinxin with dissatisfaction and asked, "Sister, what are you doing?" Bai Yinxin pulled her ear and dragged her away from the bed. She said, "What am I doing? Do you still want to ask? What are you doing?" "I'm kissing him." Bai Tingxin said matter-of-factly, "Can't you see?" Bai Yinxin said angrily, "As a woman, don't you have any sense of shame?" Bai Tingxin said, "I'm not human." Bai Yinxin's chest heaved up and down. She said, "Didn't you say that he's just a so-so and that you want to wander the world and see more men?" "I realized that I was wrong." Bai Tingxin said, "After seeing more men, I realized that he's still the best. He can help us cultivate and protect us." Bai Yinxin said, "How many men have you seen?" Bai Tingxin shook her head and said, "I don't care. Anyway, I swore that I'll marry whoever saves us." Bai Yinxin advised, "Love is a matter between 2 people. You can't force a melon to be sweet. You can't do this." Bai Tingxin said indifferently, "Who cares if it's sweet or not? I'll twist it first. Get out of here." Bai Yinxin pulled her ear and brought her out of the room. She closed the door and said, "If you continue to be like this, I'll tell father and let him punish you by going into seclusion. You can only come out after 10 years. 10 years. Bai Tingxin suddenly looked at her and asked, "Do you want to lock me up and take all of it for yourself?" Bai Yinxin said angrily, "I think you're itching for a beating. I'll teach you a good lesson today." When Li Mu woke up, he found himself lying on a soft bed. The quilt covering his body had Bai Tingxin's scent. He vaguely remembered that Bai Tingxin seemed to have been drinking him last night. Li Mu drank a lot. He did not know what happened after that. Li Mu was shocked and quickly sat up from the bed. He found that his clothes were intact and there was nothing wrong with them. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. It seemed that although the snake was a little crazy, it had not reached the point of madness. After he got up, the door opened from the outside. Bai Yinxin brought him hot water and Bai Tingxin put breakfast on the table. After Li Mu washed up simply, he saw that they were still sitting there. He said, "Sit down." Bai Yinxin sat down opposite Li Mu. Bai Tingxin touched her butt and stood obediently. Li Mu looked up and asked, "Aren't you going to sit?" Bai Tingxin shook her head, "I like to stand." Li Mu looked at Bai Yinxin and asked, "How's your injury?" Bai Yinxin covered her shoulder and said, "Much better." Li Mu stood up and walked over. He said, "Let me take a look." He walked behind Bai Yinxin and placed his right hand on her shoulder. A golden light appeared on his hand. She was injured by Chu Jiang of Gojouxian's attack. Actually, her injury was more serious than Li Mu's. Li Mu helped her force out the Yin ghost qi in her body. His mana was completely exhausted. Only after checking again did he know that her injury was still not light. Bai Yinxin dodged subconsciously. But when Li Mu's hand glowed with a golden light, the warm and numb feeling came again. Her face turned red and she sat there quietly. Bai Tingxin looked at Bai Yinxin enviously and said to Li Mu, "I'm injured too." Bai Yinxin's injury was caused by Li Mu. It was fundamentally different from her. Li Mu waved his hand and said, "My mana is limited. I can only help one. You take your time to recover." Chapter 193. You're biased. Bai Tingxin put her hands on her hips and expressed her extreme dissatisfaction with Li Mu. Recalling the scene of Bai Tingxin pouring wine on him last night, Li Mu shook his head and said, "If only you were half as obedient as your sister." When he first met Bai Yinxin, she was not much better than Bai Tingxin. During this period of time, Li Mu felt that she had changed from a naive little girl to a sensible and obedient girl. Comparing the two, Li Mu could not help but be biased. After a quarter of an hour, under Bai Tingxin's envious gaze, Li Mu withdrew his hand. Bai Yinxin's complexion also improved a lot. With the physique of a demon, the rest of her injuries could be completely healed after a period of rest. After breakfast, Li Mu and Xuandu said their goodbyes. Bai Yinxin and her sister's family had just been reunited. As outsiders, it was better not to disturb them. White Demon King took a jade box from the Tiger Demon and handed it to Xuandu. He said, "This is for second brother. Thank you for reuniting us." Xuandu did not reach out to take it. He shook his head and said, "Brother White, you're too polite. This is what brothers should do." White Demon King said, "This is a relic left behind by a 7th grade Prajna monk after he passed away. We cultivate the demon path. It's useless to leave it here." Xuandu was stunned for a moment. He reached out to take it and said, "In that case, I'll accept it." The relic of a 7th grade monk could not only be used as a magic treasure, but also to comprehend the realm of Buddhism. If it was in the hands of the Fugu school, it would be a top-grade talisman crafting material. It would be easy to craft a heaven-grade talisman. Li Mu clicked his tongue in wonder. This kind of thing was a precious treasure in Buddhism. It seemed that his big brother's wealth was far richer than Li Mu imagined. At this time, White Demon King took out an exquisite jade box from the Green Bull Demon and placed it in Li Mu's hand. He said, "There's a pair of magic treasures inside. I'll give them to third brother and sister-in-law." Li Mu opened the jade box and saw a pair of white jade rings inside. The two rings had a hollow design and an exquisite shape. The details were slightly different. One ring had a golden dragon embossed on it, while the other had a colorful phoenix wrapped around it. At first glance, it was obvious that they were a couple's magical treasures. The White Demon King explained, "This is a pair of flask heaven dharma treasures. The space inside is about the size of a house. It can be used for storage." Li Mu was taken aback and hurriedly said, "This is too expensive." The flask heaven art was a divine ability that could only be cultivated by a transcendent expert. It could be used to store anything and everything, and could also be used to create dimensions or immortals' caves. Only peak transcendent experts could use it to create magical treasures. The flask heaven treasures were all heaven-ranked treasures, and were so precious that Li Mu couldn't accept them with a clear conscience. The White Demon King smiled and said, "Take it. It's just a dharma treasure. It's nothing." Under his insistence, Li Mu finally accepted the jade box. On the way to leave with Xuandu, Li Mu couldn't help but sigh, Brother Bai is really rich. Among the three brothers, Xuandu traveled the world with a Buddhist staff and an alms bowl. Li Mu's flying boat was rewarded by the county government, and Bai Yi was given to him by Li Qing. Everything he had before was either given or freeloaded. On the other hand, the White Demon King gave away a Buddhist sacred item and a pair of heaven-ranked magical treasures. Compared to him, Li Mu and Xuandu were really younger brothers. Xuandu also sighed and said, "It's said that the dragon race has many treasures. It seems that it's true." The Bai sisters' father was a snake, and their mother was a dragon. A snake actually managed to hook up with a dragon. No matter how one looked at it, this didn't seem like something Brother Bai would do. Speaking of which, the sisters also had half the blood of the dragon race. They didn't know if they would have a chance to become a dragon in the future. After returning to the county capital, Xuandu took Xiaoyu back to the Jinshan temple and continued to use Buddhist methods to purify the evil qi in her body. Li Mu could have taken a long vacation to recuperate, but Constable Zhao said that the county governor wanted him to go to the county government to receive his reward. Li Mu went to the county government as soon as possible. After not seeing County Governor Shen for 2 days, Li Mu felt that he was completely different. In the past, County Governor Shen always reeked of alcohol and had a decadent temperament. Now, he was full of energy and was like an unsheathed sword, sharp and threatening. Li Mu asked tentatively, "Sir, have you reached the creation realm?" County Governor Shen didn't deny it. He smiled and said, "Let's go. This is the reward from the county government. Other than that, the reward from the imperial court should be coming soon." Li Mu followed County Governor Shen back to the Earth Pavilion. He guessed that he had saved all the people in the county, which was much more important than killing a few ghost generals. If the county government didn't let him choose 8 or 10 things from the Earth Pavilion, it would be a waste of his efforts. County Governor Shen glanced at the rows of wooden shelves in the Earth Pavilion and said, "The county governor said that you can take as many things as you can within 10 breaths. Li Mu was stunned for a moment and asked, "Is that true?" County Governor Shen said, "Since the county governor said so, you can take them without worry." The county governor didn't directly specify the number of things he could take. He must have considered that his contribution was too great. If he said too little, it would seem that he was stingy. If he said too much, the county government would lose too much. Li Mu was given 10 breaths. How much he could take would depend on his own ability. Li Mu asked in the end, "Does the county governor mean that everything I can take within 10 breaths is mine?" County Governor Shen nodded and said, "I suggest you take a closer look and choose what you want before you start." Li Mu shook his head and said, "There's no need. I can start now." Commandant Shen said, "All right. From now on, everything you can get from the Earth Pavilion will be yours for the next 10 breaths." Li Mu touched the ring on his finger. A white light flashed from the ring, and in the next moment, the Earth Pavilion became empty. The talismans, pills, magic treasures, and mountains of spirit jades were all gone. Even the wooden shelves that they were placed on were gone. Commandery Captain Shen looked around and finally fixed his gaze on Li Mu. Li Mu rubbed his hands and said embarrassedly, "The county governor is too polite." Although the county governor was polite, Li Mu couldn't be too greedy. In the end, he returned some things, such as the magic weapons, pills, thunder talismans, and shelves that he didn't need. As for the high-grade spiritual jades, he didn't leave a single one behind. Not long after, County Governor Lin rushed over after hearing the news. He looked at the empty Earth Pavilion and said in disbelief, "He took so much in 10 breaths. Actually, he only took 1 breath." County Governor Shen said, "I didn't expect him to have the flask Heaven Dharma treasure." County Governor Lin slapped his thigh and said regretfully, "I was careless. Forget it." County Governor Shen shook his head and said, "Since these things are gone, we can ask for more from the imperial court." Without him, the tens of thousands of lives in the county would have been killed by King Chujiang. What's the use of these dead things? Li Mu returned home and poured out a large pile of spiritual jades in front of Yu Hanyan, Wan Wan, and Little White. Yu Hanyan said in shock, didn't you go to the county office? Did you rob it? Li Mu had almost emptied the earth pavilion. It could be said that it was a robbery, but the county governor had tacitly agreed to it. After distributing the spiritual jades to Wan Wan and Little White, Yu Hanyan pulled Li Mu into the room. After hesitating for a moment, she looked up at Li Mu and said, I want to go to White Cloud Mountain. Li Mu looked at her in surprise and asked, why? Yu Hanyan lowered her head and said, I don't want to be behind you every time we encounter danger. That night, I wanted to go out and help you so much, but I couldn't do anything. I'm your future wife, but I could only watch Miss Bai save you. I don't want to be a burden to you. No matter what danger we encounter, I want to face it with you. Li Mu looked at Yu Hanyan but couldn't say anything to comfort her. At this moment, he felt a strong sense of love from her. Li Mu didn't take the opportunity to absorb her love. Instead, he pulled her into his arms and asked softly, but this way, we won't be able to see each other often. Yu Hanyan looked up and said, 1 year. I'll only cultivate with Daoist Yuzenzi for 1 year. After a year, when I've learned the cultivation method of the purine body, I'll go down the mountain to find you. At that time, you'll marry me, Li Mu said, but this year, we can't dual cultivate every night. Yu Hanyan rested her head on his chest and said softly, it's only 1 year. It's nothing to bear with it. Li Mu knew that Yu Hanyan found it harder to control her desire for dual cultivation than he did. However, she was also the one who suggested going to White Cloud Mountain to cultivate. Her body was filled with love. At this moment, Li Mu finally understood what Li Si's words meant. Liking was liking, love was love, liking was possession, love was giving, liking was unbridled and willful, love was restraint and tolerance. Li Si had once said that Li Mu needed to get married to Yu Hanyan and spend a few years together before he could understand the true meaning of love. The life and death crisis brought by King Chujiang had brought forward this time by a few years. Li Mu lowered his head and asked with a smile, aren't you afraid that I'll fall in love with other vixens while you're away? The tears on Yu Hanyan's face had yet to dry. She pinched Li Mu's waist fiercely and said angrily, you dare. Li Mu flipped his hand and a jade box appeared in his palm. Under Yu Hanyan's surprised gaze, he opened the jade box and took out the rainbow phoenix ring. He knelt on one knee and raised his head to look at her, asking, Miss Yu Hanyan, are you willing to marry me? P.S. At this point, if there are still people who think that this plot is feeding *T and poisoning you, then you really don't need to continue reading. As the author, I advise you from the bottom of my heart. I really mean it from the bottom of my heart. I don't have any intention of ridicule or anything else. Don't read anymore, don't read anymore, don't read anymore. This book isn't suitable for you. Everyone's money doesn't grow on trees. Isn't it better to subscribe to a book that doesn't feed *T and poison you? As for those who are guessing the plot and setting later and ridiculing the author, please stop. This is the biggest stupidity. Chapter 194. Lu Hanyan stared at Li Mu in a daze. She had never seen anyone propose in such a way. Li Mu half knelt on the ground and urged, hurry up and say that you're willing. Lu Hanyan blushed and whispered, how can you rush me like that? If you're not willing, I'll ask someone else. Do you want to die? A moment later, Lu Hanyan snuggled up in Li Mu's arms. Li Mu held her slender waist and asked, can you not go? The relationship between the two had just leveled up. Li Mu really couldn't bear to part with her. I don't want to go either. Lu Hanyan sighed softly and said, aren't the experts at the peak of Dongxian very powerful? If you can cultivate with her for a year, you'll definitely learn a lot of things that you can't learn outside. At that time, maybe I'll be the one to protect you. This sentence was not wrong. Fulu School was one of the 6 Daoist sections. It had a deep heritage and many divine abilities that were not passed on. Only the disciples of the sect could cultivate them. He and Li Mu practiced yin-yang dual cultivation together. Although the speed of their cultivation was not slow, they could only receive systematic guidance in cultivation in famous sections. At present, Li Mu was just an unorthodox cultivator. It was just that his path was too unorthodox. He was so unorthodox that he was always punished by the heavens. He was so unorthodox that even the disciples of famous sects had to avoid him. There was another point that Li Mu was more worried about. Lu Hanyan's cultivation speed was even faster than Li Mu's. If there was a cultivator at the peak of Dongxian guiding her cultivation by her side every day, it was inevitable that she would surpass Li Mu in a year. Perhaps a year later, she would have stepped into the divine ability realm, and Li Mu would still be in the attaining spirit realm. At that time, his status in the family might drop by one place. He was reluctant to part with Lu Hanyan, but he also knew that he could not change her decision. She was not the kind of person who was willing to hide behind a man and be protected by others. The incident with Chu Jiang of Gojoseon had deeply stimulated her, so much so that she did not hesitate to make the decision to temporarily separate from Li Mu. A year's time was neither long nor short. Since he could not change it, Li Mu thought for a moment and said, "Then I'll visit you at Mount Baiyun once a month." The county capital was not too far away from Mount Baiyun. A round trip, including the time spent together, would take at most 3 to 5 days. The county minister would definitely approve of 3 to 5 days of leave every month. Lu Hanyan crushed the jade talisman. In an instant, Yu Zhenzi appeared in the courtyard. She looked at Lu Hanyan and asked, "Have you made up your mind?" Lu Hanyan asked, "After becoming a disciple of the Fulu school, can I get married?" Yu Zhenzi nodded. She looked at Li Mu and said, "Yes, you can even enter the sect with him." Unfortunately, the great Zhou court probably won't agree. In the past, Hyun Jinko had once invited Li Mu, but Li Mu had refused. At that time, if he had resigned from his position and entered the Fulu school, there would have been no resistance. Things were different now. After the incident with Xiaoyu, Li Mu was now the ambassador of the imperial court. It was impossible for him to join a sect so casually. After understanding these things, Lu Hanyan said to Yu Zhenzi, "Can I stay for a few more days?" Yu Zhenzi said, "Whenever you want to leave, you can leave." Yu Zhenzi was very tolerant of Lu Hanyan. She herself also had a purine body and was most familiar with this kind of constitution. It was naturally best for Lu Hanyan to cultivate with her. Her decades of experience could allow Lu Hanyan to avoid many detours. Cultivating with her was even more suitable for her than dual cultivation with Li Mu. Of course, the best situation would be for her to cultivate with Yu Zhenzi for a year. After establishing a good foundation, she could return to dual cultivate with Li Mu. A short separation was only for a better reunion. It was only a year. Li Mu could use such a reason to comfort himself. After Yu Zhenzi left, Lu Hanyan held Li Mu's hand and said, "In these few days, do your best to absorb my emotions and condense the final soul." Only then did Li Mu realize her purpose in forcing him to stay for a few days. He hugged Lu Hanyan and sighed, "Why are you so silly?" Lu Hanyan shook her head and said, "When you faced Chu Jiang of Gojoseon alone, weren't you also very silly?" 3 days later, Lu Hanyan and Yu Zhenzi were going to White Cloud Mountain. Lu Hanyan gave Wanwan 2 choices. Wanwan hesitated for a long time but still decided to go with her. Lu Hanyan also gave Xiaobai a choice. She chose to stay by Li Mu's side. Li Mu hugged Xiaobai and stroked her head. He said, "In the next year, only the two of us will depend on each other." Xiaobai used her head to rub Li Mu's chest and said, "I will always accompany benefactor." Besides accompanying Li Mu, Xiaobai also had a mission. It was to ensure that there was no other fox spirit by Li Mu's side besides herself. This was the mission Lu Hanyan had given her. After Lu Hanyan left, the matters of the Yunyan pavilion fell to Zhang Shan's sole responsibility. In the past few days, he had already completely immersed himself in the role of shopkeeper. According to Lu Hanyan, Zhang Shan was very talented in business. He was especially sensitive to accounts. He had clearly never studied, but his sense of smell in this aspect was even sharper than the most brilliant accountant. When he drank with Zhang Shan and Li Si, Li Mu unexpectedly learned from Li Si that Chen Miaomiao was also going to the Fulu school to cultivate. She was relying on her relationship with Governor Chen. It was said that Governor Chen was very close to an elder of the third branch. Li Mu said in surprise, "She's willing to leave you?" Normally, Chen Miao would stick to Li Si at all times. When he heard this news, Li Mu was even more surprised than when he heard that Lu Hanyan was going to mount Bai Yun. Li Si shook his head and said, "That night, in front of Chu Jiang of Gojouzian, we were completely powerless to fight back. Miao said that she wanted to cultivate properly and come back to protect me in the future." Zhang Shan gnawed on the pork shoulder and shook his head. "This girl is really stupid. Eat your pork shoulder." Li Mu glanced at him and said, "What do you know?" "This is called love." Li Si looked at Zhang Shan pitifully and shook his head. "Why are you telling him this? He probably won't understand in this lifetime." For days later, Mount Baiyun Peak. Baiyun Peak was the first branch of the ancestral court of Fu Lu School, and it was also the strongest branch. The head of Baiyun Peak, Yu Zhenzi, had already reached the peak of Dongxian. Among her peers, she was only slightly inferior to the headmaster. This time, Li Mu also came with Yu Zhenzi. This was his first time coming to the ancestral court of Fu Lu School. After getting a clear understanding of the mountain gate, it would be a walk in the park for him to come again in the future. "Greetings, head martial uncle." At the top of Baiyun Peak, in a Dao palace, several old men and women bowed to Yu Zhenzi. Li Mu stood in the hall and looked at these creation realm experts. When he looked at Yu Zhenzi again, he was almost certain that she was definitely over 100 years old. Yu Zhenzi held Lu Hanyan's hand and said to everyone, "This is the new disciple I took in after leaving the mountain." After saying that, she said to Lu Hanyan, "These are your senior brothers and sisters." Lu Hanyan looked at the white-haired people and bowed. Lu Hanyan greets senior brothers and sisters. After being stunned for a moment, they immediately said, "Junior sister Lu, there's no need to be so polite." Before Li Mu came, he did not realize this. Yu Zhenzi's seniority in Fu Lu School was extremely high. She was of the same generation as the headmaster and was even above the creation realm elders of the various peaks. Becoming Yu Zhenzi's disciple meant that she was of the same generation as the elders of the various peaks. Compared to young disciples like Li Qing and Hanja, she was of an entire generation higher. If Hanja and Li Qing met her in the future, they would have to call her martial uncle. After introducing each other, Yu Zhenzi said, "Han Yan has just arrived at Baiyun Peak. If any of you have time, bring her around the peak to familiarize herself." An old woman said, "This disciple happens to be free." Lu Hanyan was clearly not used to being with these senior brothers and sisters who were much older than her. She hurriedly pulled Li Mu out of the Dao Palace. A young disciple walked in from outside. When he saw her, he was stunned for a moment and asked in confusion, "Junior sister, are you new? You look a little unfamiliar, impudent." A stern voice came from inside. The young disciple looked at an old man and said in a trembling voice, "Master." The old man's face darkened as he strode out and said, "Don't be rude. This is martial Uncle Lu. Hurry up and greet her." The young disciple was stunned for a moment before he immediately lowered his head and said, "Greetings, martial Uncle Lu. No need for formalities, no need for formalities." Lu Hanyan waved her hand and pulled Li Mu out as if she was escaping. The young disciple was left in place with a blank and shocked expression. The two of them were led around Baiyun Peak by the old woman. After familiarizing themselves with the peak, the old woman pointed at a towering peak in front of them and said, "That is my Fu Lu School's main peak. Junior sister Lu, do you want to go take a look at the main peak?" On Baiyun Peak, being called martial uncle by many disciples of the same age as her or even older than her made Lu Hanyan feel uncomfortable. She nodded her head and said, "Then let's go take a look at the main peak." The old woman summoned a cloud. Li Mu and Lu Hanyan stepped on the cloud and slowly flew up to the main peak. After Li Mu landed, he looked up and saw a huge bell suspended in the air. There were simple patterns on the huge bell. At a glance, one could tell that it was an old object. There was a deep crack across the body of the bell. Li Mu instantly realized that this was most likely the Dao bell of Fu Lu School. Just as he was about to follow the old woman and Lu Hanyan to the main hall in front, he heard a soft sound just as he took a step forward. Li Mu looked up and saw that the Dao bell had begun to shake violently. It seemed to be trembling. In the square in front of the main hall, the disciples quickly noticed this scene. What's wrong with the Dao bell? Why is it shaking so violently? Why do I feel like the Dao bell is shaking? Is it afraid of something? That can't be. What could make the Dao bell afraid? Li Mu felt a little guilty. He had a feeling that the shaking of the Dao bell had something to do with him. He tentatively lifted his foot. Before he could take a step, he saw a scene that shocked him to the core. The moment Li Mu lifted his foot, the Dao bell in the air shook even more violently. It suddenly broke free from its frame and flew straight into the depths of the clouds. The disciples stared blankly at this scene. After a long time, someone finally spoke in shock. The Dao bell ran away. Chapter 195. On the main peak of Mount Baiyun, the Dao bell trembled and flew straight into the depths of the clouds. Li Mu was dumbfounded. The Fulu school disciples in front of the square were also dumbfounded. They had been in the sect for several years. They had not seen this scene for decades, but in the past half a year, they had seen it all. The moment the Dao bell escaped, streams of light shot into the sky from the peaks of the Fulu school and disappeared into the clouds. Li Mu hurriedly walked to Lu Hanyan and the old woman and asked in shock, "What happened? Why did the bell run away?" The old woman's expression was solemn as she said, "The Dao bell has a spirit. It can't have produced such a phenomenon for no reason. It must have encountered something that scared it. What kind of demon is so bold as to break into Mount Baiyun?" As soon as she finished speaking, the clouds rolled and the Dao bell appeared again. A few figures were protecting it. Among them was Hyun Jinko, whom Li Mu had seen once, and Yuzhen Zi. The other people had obscure auras. They were obviously the strongest of the ancestral court. An old man with an immortal aura flew out from the Dao palace on the main peak. He flew to the side of the Dao bell and gently stroked it as if he was whispering something. It felt like a junior who had been bullied and had found his elders to back him up. A bad feeling arose in Li Mu's heart, and he quietly hid behind the old woman. The sage-like old man said a few words to the Dao bell before he suddenly looked down. At the end of his line of sight was Li Mu. The few Dongxian experts also focused their gazes on Li Mu. Yuzhen Zi looked at Li Mu and then at the Dao bell. He seemed to have realized something and transmitted a few words to the old man. The old man nodded and said, "The Dao bell cracked because of him." The Dao bell must have sensed his aura and felt fear. Li Mu felt goosebumps all over his body as he was stared at by these people. He was secretly worried that they would force him to pay for the clock once they were in the Fulu school's territory. This was not the county yamen, and there was no one behind him to back him up. Everyone descended from the sky. The old woman immediately bowed and said, "Greetings, martial uncle's sect leader." "Greetings, martial uncles." Yuzhen Zi looked at Lu Hanyan and introduced her to everyone. "This is the new disciple that I took in when I went down the mountain." Lu Hanyan hurriedly saluted. Lu Hanyan greets martial uncle's sect leader and martial uncles. The sage-like elder looked at Yuzhen Zi and said with a smile, "Congratulations, junior sister. You've finally fulfilled your wish and found a successor." The others also congratulated her, "Congratulations, senior sister." Yuzhen Zi glanced at them and asked, "Are you just congratulating me?" A middle-aged man was stunned for a moment before he realized something. He flipped his right hand and a fulu appeared in his palm. He smiled and handed the fulu to Lu Hanyan, saying, "This is the first time we've met. This is martial uncle's gift. Martial niece Lu, please accept it." The spiritual power circulating on this fulu was probably of a higher level than the fulu that Wu Bo had used before. Lu Hanyan looked at Yuzhen Zi. Yuzhen Zi nodded and said, "This is the golden armor talisman. It can summon a sixth realm divine weapon. Although it's only a consumable item, it's also martial uncle Xingyang Zi's kind intentions. Please accept it." Lu Hanyan accepted the fulu and said, "Thank you, martial uncle Xingyang Zi." Zi looked at another young woman and said, "This is Martial Uncle Dan Yangzi of Danxia Peak." Martial Uncle Dan Yangzi's alchemy skills are at the peak of perfection. She's not inferior to the Danding sect. The young woman stretched out her hand and a jade box appeared in her palm. The jade box was crystal clear and one could vaguely see a pill lying inside. She smiled and said, "I've refined this pill recently. After taking it, it can make one's appearance forever and not age. It also has the effect of tempering the body and can expel the acquired impurities in the body. From then on, you'll be immune to all poisons and evils." Zi took the jade box and placed it in Lu Hanyan's hand, saying, "Martial Uncle Dan Yangzi can only refine a few heaven-grade pills in a year. Hurry up and thank her." Lu Hanyan accepted the jade box and said embarrassedly, "Thank you, Martial Uncle Dan Yangzi." Zi looked at the other old man and said, "This is Martial Uncle Yuquanzi of Purple Cloud Peak. I heard that he obtained a heaven-grade armor a few days ago." Yuquanzi laughed bitterly. A white light flashed in his hand and a silver-threaded soft armor appeared in his palm. He said, "This armor was obtained from a 1,000-year-old silkworm demon in the bitter cold of the myriad demons' country. It can withstand a full-force attack from a 6th realm cultivator. I'll give it to Martial Niece Lu for self-protection." Although it pained him to give away the armor, his senior sister had already asked for it. He had to give it to her. If he angered her, she would call him out for no reason and check his cultivation progress. If she beat him up from time to time in front of all the disciples, would he still want his old face? Senior sister Zi had spent a lot of effort to find a successor. Over the years, she had found many people with a purine body. It was either their gender did not match or they were too old. Most of them were abandoned by their parents or drowned. It was not easy to find one. Today, she had to give it to her. Lu Hanyan accepted the soft armor and said, "Thank you, Martial Uncle Yuquanzi." Zi then looked at Hyun Jinko and said, "This is Martial Uncle Hyun Jinko of Qingxian Peak. Martial Uncle Hyun Jinko is my direct junior martial brother. I watched him grow up and I was also the one who guided him into the path of cultivation." Hyun Jinko had already taken out a Fulu card. When he heard Zi's words, he silently kept it. A white light flashed and a long sword appeared in his hand. Zi was shocked. "You plan to give away the Qingxian sword?" Hyun Jinko looked at the Qingxian sword longingly and said, "Senior sister has found a good disciple. Junior martial brother is happy for her." "A sword is nothing." Zi took the Qingxian sword from his hand and said, "At least you still have some conscience. Hanyan, why aren't you thanking Martial Uncle Hyun Jinko?" Lu Hanyan took the sword and said, "Thank you, Martial Uncle Hyun Jinko." Li Mu secretly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. None of the things that these people gave were lower than the heaven rank. All of the things that Li Mu took from the county office's Earth Character Pavilion could not compare to one of these. This trip to Mount Baiyun was indeed not in vain. At the same time, his heart was somewhat sour. Fulu school favored girls over boys. It was too obvious. When Hyun Jinko invited him, he was only casually asking. After being rejected by Li Mu, he did not follow up. If Li Mu had Lu Hanyan's treatment back then, perhaps he would have already become a disciple of Fulu school. Unfortunately, Fulu school did not have a pure young body first seat and needed him to inherit the mantle. Although the probability of a pure young body and a purine body were about the same, due to the common people's preference for boys and the ignorant concept that a purine 8 character was a heavenly calamity star that would jinx their parents and relatives, very few girls with a purine body could survive. Zi finally looked at the old man with the demeanor of an immortal and said, "This is the head martial uncle. He is the head of a sect, so he will definitely be more generous than the martial uncles of the head martial uncle." The old man shook his head and took out a jade stone. He said, "There is a Dao page in here. After reading it once, it will disappear. Whether or not she can comprehend a Dao technique will depend on her luck." Dao page. Li Mu was secretly shocked. Today's 6 sects of Taoism all came from the Dao scripture. The Dao page was a page of the Dao scripture. Fulu School's head martial uncle said that this Dao page could allow one to comprehend a Dao technique. It must be a page of the Dao scripture. Although Dao techniques and Abhijna were both spells, there was a fundamental difference. Abhijna needed to be cultivated and comprehended. It was based on one's own mana. If one's aptitude was poor, even if they were given the method of cultivating Abhijna, they would not be able to learn it. Dao techniques were the operation of the power of heaven and earth. There was no need to cultivate. As long as one grasped the mantra mudra, they would have the key to opening the door to heaven and earth. To be able to let Lu Hanyan comprehend a Dao page meant that he truly treated her as an inner disciple of Fulu School. Yu Zhenzi took the jade stone and said to Lu Hanyan, "There are still a few uncle masters who are wandering outside. When they return, I will bring you to meet them one by one." After Lu Hanyan and the few first seats got to know each other, everyone looked up at the Dao bell. The bell was still hanging in the sky. When it felt Li Mu's gaze, it retreated. Li Mu stretched out his hands and said, "I didn't do anything." The old man smiled helplessly and said, "The Dao bell has been here for almost 1,000 years. It has already developed intelligence. It was hurt by you, so it will naturally be afraid of you. If you treat it kindly, it will not be afraid anymore. I'll give it a try." Li Mu nodded and looked at the bell with a kind smile on his face. Buzz! The Dao bell trembled a few times and flew up again, disappearing into the clouds. The smile on Li Mu's face froze. The old man shook his head and said, "Forget it. Let it be." They no longer paid attention to the Dao bell. Instead, they looked at Li Mu. Their gazes contained a strange power. This made Li Mu feel as if he had been stripped naked and was standing in front of everyone. How can there be such a heavenly retribution physique? This is simply unheard of. He also has a pure yang physique. Could it be that a pure yang physique will be punished by the heavens when cursing the heavens? If it is the heavens' retribution, why would it cause the Dao bell to ring and even cause it to crack? Didn't the head teacher say that the Dao bell had indeed sensed a new Dao technique? It could not withstand the power of the heavens and earth that was triggered by the Dao technique, so it cracked. Everyone looked at Li Mu and discussed endlessly. In the end, the Fulu School's head teacher waved his hand and said, "Enough. The matters of the heavens and earth are mysterious and difficult to understand. Even we can only see a sliver of it. The crack on the Dao bell will repair itself. There is no need to discuss this matter anymore." When everyone heard this, they all fell silent. The might of the heavens was unpredictable. Cultivators understood the heavenly Dao and followed the heavenly Dao. This was also the reason why the Fulu School was unwilling to make a move after the evil spirit in the North County was born. There was naturally a reason for the crack on the Dao bell. Perhaps there was some kind of heavenly Dao law behind it. It was not to be recklessly discussed. The few grotto profound experts looked at Li Mu with astonishment in their eyes. Even though they had cultivated for decades and had profound cultivation, this was the first time they had heard of such a thing. Although he would be punished every time he cursed the heavens, this was also a response from the heavens and earth. And this was what these Dongxian cultivators yearned for even in their dreams. When they could casually create Dao techniques like him and receive a response from the heavens and earth, it would be the time for them to advance and transcend. They also wanted the heavens' retribution. Chapter 196. After the headmaster spoke, these people did not seem to want Li Mu to compensate, nor did they investigate why he was always punished by the heavens. Li Mu felt relieved for himself, but at the same time, he did not have to worry about Lu Hanyan anymore. Lu Hanyan's situation on Mount Baiyun was completely different from what Li Mu had expected. He had expected that the experience of pure Yin would be more popular, but he did not expect it to be this popular. She had become the martial aunt of the younger generation in a flash. She received so many gifts that even Li Mu was envious. On Mount Baiyun, Lu Hanyan stuffed the golden armor talisman, the soft ice silkworm armor, and the Qingxian sword into Li Mu's hands. She said, "I have no use for these things in the school. You can have them." his own woman knew how to care for him. However, Li Mu still shook his head and said, "These are gifts from the peak masters. It is not good for me to take them." Lu Hanyan said, "Since they are gifts for me, I have the right to deal with them. I will not encounter any danger when I cultivate in the school. You are different. You have to deal with demons and ghosts all day long." I am worried. In order to reassure Lu Hanyan, Li Mu accepted the Fulu talisman and the soft ice armor. He left the Qingxian sword behind and said, "This sword seems to be very valuable. You should keep it with you. You just happen to lack a sword." The jade hairpin that Li Mu gave to Lu Hanyan was only a Xian-class magic weapon. The Qingxian sword was obviously a heaven-class weapon. Even Hyun Jinko felt the pinch when he gave it away. If Li Mu took it away and he found out, it would not be good. Lu Hanyan looked at the bai in Li Mu's hands and said unhappily, "You don't want the sword I gave you, but you want the one from Arresterly." Li Mu explained, "I've gotten used to using this sword. Besides, there's a sword spirit in it. The Qingxian sword is too precious. It's the treasure of the Fulu school. If I take it away and Taoist Hyun Jinko finds out, what would he think?" Lu Hanyan didn't insist, but said, "Since you have the chance to come to Fulu school, aren't you going to see Constable Li?" "Li Mu, he left the sect a long time ago." Lu Hanyan looked at him and asked, "How did you know?" Li Mu explained, "The last time Constable Han went down the mountain, he mentioned it in passing." Lu Hanyan pursed her lips and said, "You always remember Constable Li's matters so clearly." At this time, it was best not to follow up on this topic. Li Mu immediately said, "You and Wanwan go take a look at the residence first. Since I've come to Mount Baiyun, I have to meet Hanja." Hanja was in the 5th branch, which belonged to the Qingxian Peak. After walking out of the Taoist palace of Baiyun Peak, Li Mu said to the old woman, "I have an old friend in Qingxian Peak. Senior, can you bring me to Qingxian Peak?" The old woman nodded and brought Li Mu to another peak on a cloud. The old woman who led Li Mu and Lu Hanyan to familiarize themselves with the sect was also in the creation realm. She was in the same realm as the governor and deputy. Fulu school was one of the 6 sects of Taoism. There were countless powerhouses in the sect. There were nearly 10 creation realm powerhouses in the ancestral courts Baiyun Peak alone. The heads of the 7 peaks were all from Dongxian. The sect master was even in the 7th realm and had transcended. There were countless hidden powerhouses in the sect. Not to mention that this was only the ancestral court of Fulu school. Outside of the ancestral court, there were many branches that had the same origin as the ancestral court. Compared to the Great Zhou court, this kind of strength was slightly inferior. However, whether it was the current Great Zhou or the previous dynasty, they were not willing to easily offend these sections. After arriving at Qingxian Peak, the old woman sent a disciple to pass the message. After a while, Hanja ran out of a Taoist palace. Junior sister Qin followed behind him step by step. "Why are you here?" When he saw Li Mu, Hanja's face was filled with joy. He asked, "Have you finally thought it through and want to enter my Fulu school?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "I'm just here to send Han Yen and to see you." "Could it be that Lady Lu has entered the Fulu school?" Hanja said in surprise, "Which peak is she in? Which elder is she under?" Li Mu said, "Baiyun Peak, under Daoist Yuzenzi." "Yuzenzi." Hanja touched his chin and said doubtfully, "I've heard of the elders of Baiyun Peak. Where is the one called Yuzenzi?" Junior sister Qin opened her mouth in surprise and said, "Yuzenzi, isn't the head of Baiyun Peak Marshal Granduncle Yuzenzi?" Hanja finally realized something. He looked at Li Mu and asked in shock, "Lady Lu has become Yuzenzi's disciple?" Li Mu nodded. Hanja's face was filled with disbelief. "Then isn't she our martial aunt?" "In theory, it is." Hanja was stunned for a while before he accepted this fact. Then, he said, "So the rich woman they said you hooked up with is Lady Lu. In the end, you still chose Lady Lu." He sighed and said, "Back then, the 3 of us were the same. Now, Li Si has Miss Miao Miao, you have Lady Lu, but by my side." Li Mu looked at junior sister Qin and said, isn't there junior sister Qin by your side? Junior sister Qin's face turned red and she looked down at her feet. Speaking of this, Han Zhe was a little distressed. He said to junior sister Qin, senior brother Qin once said that he wanted me to supervise your cultivation. If you follow me like this every day, how can you have time to cultivate? Isn't this letting me down senior brother Qin's trust? Junior sister Qin glared at him angrily and gritted her teeth. I'll go cultivate now. Looking at junior sister Qin's back, Li Mu shook his head helplessly. The old woman glanced at Han Zhe with a strange look on her face. After all, they were friends. Li Mu couldn't bear to see him die alone. He reminded, what I mean is, how about junior sister Qin be your Dao companion? I really haven't thought about this. Han Zhe shook his head and said, senior brother Qin asked me to take care of her. How can I be her Dao companion? Besides, even if I'm willing, junior sister Qin might not be willing, Li Mu said. How do you know if she's willing or not if you don't ask? Han Zhe was taken aback for a moment before he asked, can I ask that directly? Why not? Wouldn't it be too abrupt to ask directly? Don't tell me you guys usually ask directly. What else? Han Zhe's experience in love was blank. After hearing Li Mu's words, he seemed to understand something. He thought for a while and said, then I'll ask senior sister Zhang and see if she's willing. Li Mu changed his mind. Letting Han Zhe find a Dao companion was the greatest injustice to other people with normal EQ. Li Mu didn't plan to get involved in their affairs. In the next 2 days, he accompanied Lu Hanyan to play for 2 days with Han Zhe and junior sister Qin. On the morning of the 3rd day, he prepared to go down the mountain and return to the county capital. After all, he wasn't a disciple of the Fulu school. It wasn't good for him to stay here for long. There were other official matters at the yamen. On Baiyun Peak, Lu Hanyan held Li Mu's hand and said, when I'm not by your side, you're not allowed to fool around outside. I'll let Xiao Bai watch over you. Li Mu promised, don't worry. Except for you, I won't even take a second look at other flowers and plants. Lu Hanyan hugged him and said, I don't want to leave you. Li Mu kissed her forehead gently and said, I'll come to see you soon. Although Li Mu also hoped that the two of them could dual cultivate every night, she obviously didn't want to hide behind Li Mu forever. With a purine body, the guidance of a good teacher, and the cultivation resources of the Fulu school, she could go further on the path of cultivation in the future. After bidding farewell to the reluctant Lu Hanyan, Li Mu rode the flying boat and watched her and Wanwan standing on Baiyun Peak from afar. They eventually disappeared into the clouds. Chapter 197. Prefectural City. Li Mu pushed open the door and entered. The courtyard was extremely empty. Without Lu Hanyan and Wanwan, the house instantly felt a little less lively. When they were here, Li Mu did not feel so strongly. After they left, Li Mu realized how important it was to have a mistress in the house. Benefactor, a white figure ran out from the inner courtyard. Li Mu bent down and touched Xiao Bai's head. He said, you can turn back into your human form in the future. Considering Lu Hanyan's feelings, Xiao Bai appeared in her original form most of the time in front of Li Mu. In fact, Li Mu knew that she liked to turn into her human form, wear beautiful clothes and beautiful jewelry. Human beings were the most intelligent creatures. This was a tacit fact of all the races in this world. Therefore, no matter what kind of monster it was, the initial goal of cultivation was to turn into a human form. After Xiao Bai turned into her human form and put on her clothes, Li Mu said, you can go and cultivate. I'll go and cook. Xiao Bai walked up and said, I'll go with you. After I learn how to cook, I can cook for you myself. From the beginning, Xiao Bai was very clear about her position. She was here to repay Li Mu's kindness. Washing clothes, cooking, warming the bed and folding the quilt were all things she should do. Li Mu was actually not used to being served in all aspects. However, this habit of repaying kindness was rooted in the blood of the Heavenly Fox clan. Xiao Bai listened to him in everything, except for these things. After a long time, Li Mu also let her be. In the evening, when Li Mu returned to his room, Xiao Bai had already warmed the quilt for him. When Li Mu walked into the room, she turned into her original form and folded the clothes and put them on the bed. She had just turned into her human form. Although her emotional intelligence was not as good as that of an adult human, she seemed to know that when she turned into her human form, she could not sleep with Li Mu. Sister Lu would be unhappy. However, as long as she turned into her original form, it would be fine even if she was touched and hugged by her benefactor. When Li Mu woke up in the morning, Xiao Bai had already gotten up. She put the hot water on Li Mu's bed and said, "Benefactor, you can come for breakfast after you wash up." More than half a year ago, when Li Mu saved her from the hunters, he would never have thought that this would happen. If Wan Wan was Lu Hanyan's maidservant, then Xiao Bai was his maidservant. She was his personal maidservant. She washed clothes, cooked, warmed the bed, and served him. As long as she could think of it, Li Mu didn't have to worry about it. After breakfast, Xiao Bai took the initiative to clean up the dishes while Li Mu went to the county yamen. It had been a long time since the incident in Yang County. Li Mu had already chosen the reward from the county yamen, but the reward promised by the imperial court had not arrived. In the beginning, in order to eliminate Xiao Yu, the people of the old faction had offered the highest reward of heaven-grade Fulu and heaven-grade elixirs. Later, Her Majesty the Empress personally issued a decree to exonerate Xiao Yu of her crimes. Naturally, the reward offered by the old faction was nullified. However, Li Mu had also played a big role in Xiao Yu's repentance. Moreover, without Li Mu's consent, the new faction had made him the ambassador of the Great Zhou's officialdom. They had promoted him everywhere in the 36 counties to attract the hearts of the people and gather the public opinion. No matter what, they had to pay the endorsement fee, right? This was only the incident in Yang County. After that, Li Mu fought with Chu Jiang of Gojoseon and was seriously injured. He saved tens of thousands of people in the North County and saved tens of thousands of lives. At the same time, he also prevented an extremely vicious incident from happening for the North County and the Imperial Court. He had made an unparalleled contribution. If Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's plan succeeded, it would definitely cause waves in the 36 counties and even shake the status of the current empress. With such a contribution, Li Mu was worried for the empress. What reward would she give him? On the way to the county yamen, Li Mu was thinking about these things. Suddenly, he turned around and looked behind him. Just now, he suddenly had a creepy feeling, as if he was being stared at by some ferocious beast. When he turned around, that feeling disappeared again. He raised his arm and saw the hair on his wrist standing on end. Li Mu shook his head and continued to walk forward. However, he did not go to the county yamen. Instead, he patrolled the streets. 15 minutes later, Li Mu patrolled to the city gate. He walked out of the county city, deviated from the official road, and walked into the wilderness. Another 15 minutes later, he was already in the mountains. There was no one around him. Li Mu suddenly stopped and turned around to look behind him. He said calmly, "Come out." The space in front of him fluctuated. A thin old man with 3 long swords on his back stood not far away. He looked at him with a strange gaze and asked, "How did you find out?" Li Mu actually did not notice it. It was just that his body instinctively sensed danger. He left the county city and came here just to confirm it. Now, it seemed that his senses were not wrong. Someone was indeed spying on him. Li Mu asked, "Who are you people?" The old man grinned and said, "The dead don't need to know so much." As soon as he finished speaking, the space behind the old man fluctuated strangely. 4 black-clothed figures appeared. These 4 people wore strange armor and had wooden expressions. They did not seem like humans to Li Mu. Instead, they were like beasts. Furthermore, they were beasts without emotions. A strange sound came from the old man's mouth, and the 4 black-clothed figures suddenly rushed towards Li Mu. The 4 of them were so fast that they even left afterimages where they stood. This speed had already surpassed that of ordinary cultivators with remarkable abilities. These 4 people did not seem to have any intelligence. Other than being fast, their attacks were very simple. However, from the momentum of their attacks, Li Mu could not take them head-on. He used the swordsman formula to move between the four people. His mind was spinning rapidly. At first, Li Mu thought that they were four flying corpses. However, he did not feel any corpse aura from their bodies. He had the memories of 1,000 illusions venerable and quickly figured out what these four people were. Puppets. Puppets and zombies were very similar, but they were fundamentally different. Zombies did not have souls and were dead. Puppets had souls and were sealed in their bodies. Zombies could instinctively attack, but puppets needed to be controlled by their masters. After zombies gained intelligence, they would also have human emotions and no fear. However, puppets were different. Although they had souls, they did not have their own consciousness. They were fearless and did not fear death. Among the 10 demonic sects, there was a sect called the Puppet Sect. They were good at refining all kinds of puppets. Outsiders liked to buy puppets from them and raise them as sacrificial soldiers. The thin old man in gray stood in the distance and said in surprise, "You're not old, but you know a lot." After special refinement, the bodies of these puppets were comparable to magic treasures. Bai's magic treasure was only a profound ranked magic treasure and could hardly hurt them. The four puppets were comparable to cultivators with the remarkable power. With Li Mu's current strength, it would be difficult to defeat them. Moreover, there was an old man whose realm was unknown. He stood in the distance and watched covetously. Li Mu did not intend to expend too much of his dermic powers. Unless it was a last resort, he did not intend to use Madame Chu's dermic powers to use Dao techniques. He took out a Fulu. After activating it with his dermic powers, the Fulu turned into a small golden sword and slashed at the old man in gray. This puppet was controlled by the old man. If the controller died, the puppet would lose its ability to move. Li Mu had obtained this talisman from robbing the county government's treasure vault. Its power was roughly equivalent to a strike from a Destiny Realm expert and could kill enemies below the 5th realm. This was Li Mu's test of the old man's strength. High-level sword talisman. The old man did not expect that a small constable from the North County would have such a treasure. The sword talisman was very fast and very agile. He dodged a few times, but the small golden sword still chased after him. In the end, the old man gritted his teeth and formed a seal. When the small sword caught up, he hit his chest and spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood mist wrapped around the sword talisman and the light on the small golden sword dimmed quickly. Finally, it disappeared completely. The old man's face became extremely pale and his dermic powers were greatly weakened. He roared and formed a seal with his 2 hands. The 3 swords on his back suddenly flew out. They shone with spiritual light and attacked Li Mu. Li Mu had already figured out the old man's strength. At most, he was a remarkable power cultivator and had not reached the Destiny realm. He calmly took out another sword talisman and activated the Fulu. Another small golden sword appeared in the air. With a few clangs, the old man's 3 flying swords dimmed and flew back. The old man's dermic powers weakened again. The old man was shocked. "You still have sword talismans." The small golden sword had already flown in front of him. The old man did not hesitate. He bit the tip of his tongue and spat out another mouthful of essence blood. The small golden sword was stained with blood. The golden light dimmed and it finally collapsed. As for the old man, after spitting out essence blood twice in a row, his dermic powers had weakened to the extreme. He simply sat on the ground and used all his strength to control the 4 puppets. The speed of the 4 puppets increased dramatically. With their strong bodies, if they caught Li Mu, they would probably tear him to pieces. The old man gritted his teeth. "I want to see how many more of your Earth-rank Fulu you have." Li Mu flipped his hand and a stack of Fulu appeared in his palm. He threw one out and a huge illusory hand suddenly appeared above his head. The huge hand pressed down on the 4 puppets and directly pressed them into the ground. Puff! Blood gushed out of the old man's mouth as he looked at Li Mu in horror. He cursed angrily in his heart. Who said that the target this time was only a small bailiff with no background and the highest cultivation level was only at the immortal realm? The immortal realm was at the immortal realm, but this immortal realm was too rich and overbearing. He threw out one earth-rank Fulu after another. Even a core disciple of the Fulu school would not be so wasteful. Li Mu held another sword talisman in his hand. He looked at the old man and asked, "Who ordered you to come?" This was the first time Li Mu met the old man. Naturally, he would not offend him. This person wanted to kill him as soon as they met. There must be someone behind him. There was a mistake in the target's information. He had underestimated the opponent's strength. The old man did not want to continue fighting and retreated quickly. With a thought, Li Mu's Bai sword flew out of his hand. Mrs. Chu's figure appeared and quickly chased after the old man. Chapter 198. Madame Chu's current cultivation had completely stabilized at the Soul Realm. The grey-robed elder might already be at the peak of the fourth realm, but under the consumption of Li Mu's 2 earth-rank Fulu, his blood essence was greatly damaged, and his magic power was less than 10%. Madame Chu was enough to deal with him. Li Mu put away the stack of Fulu in his hand. This was actually the reason why cultivators from other sects rarely provoked the disciples of the Fulu school. For hundreds and thousands of years, the Fulu school's research on Fulu had reached the peak. They knew how to use the Fulu to activate the power of heaven and earth, or seal the divine abilities of their elders in the Fulu, and use it to fight the enemy at the critical moment. This way, the enemy seemed to be facing the disciples of the Fulu school, but in fact, they were facing the experts of the Fulu school. If it weren't for the fact that the higher the level of the Fulu, the more precious the materials needed and the lower the success rate of the talisman, even if the Fulu school gathered the strength of the entire sect, they couldn't draw more than a few heaven-rank Fulu in a year. The position of the head of the 6 Dao sects wouldn't have been taken by Xuanzong. Madame Chu quickly returned, and the grey-robed elder was only left with his essence soul. The elder's essence soul was scattered, and he was extremely terrified. He couldn't help but say, spare me, my lord." Li Mu asked again, "Who asked you to kill me?" The elder hurriedly explained, "I only received a mission. I don't know who the mastermind is." Li Mu had always been in the North County. If he had offended anyone or any faction, the demon sect was one. After all, Master Qinhuan and Chu Jiang of Gojoseon had died directly or indirectly in his hands. However, only a few people knew about these two matters. If the demon sect wanted to settle the score, they would look for the county governor, deputy, and lieutenant. They wouldn't find Li Mu. Other than that, he had only offended the old party of the imperial court. The brother of the county magistrate of Yang County's wife, an assistant minister of the Ministry of Personnel, was a member of the old party. The incident in Yang County was caused by Li Mu, and because of Li Mu, the old party's plot failed. It was very likely that the old party would secretly send assassins to deal with Li Mu. If Shao Chen were to ask, he would not be able to get any information out of this old man. Li Mu glanced at him and said to Madame Chu, "Search his soul." Madame Chu shook her head and said, "His skills are higher than mine. I can't search his soul." Li Mu, "Don't worry, I'll teach you." Under normal circumstances, soul searching was something that could only be done by cultivators searching mortals. High-level cultivators would search low-level cultivators. However, this was not absolute. It was possible to make an exception using some evil methods. Li Mu would never show mercy to those who wanted to kill him. He erased the old man's consciousness and taught Madame Chu the demon sect's soul-searching method from Master Thousand Illusions' memories. Madame Chu took a deep breath and sucked the old man's consciousness into her body. Madame Chu entered Bai. Li Mu glanced at the 4 puppets that could no longer move and put them into the flask world. Then, he walked in the direction of the county city. When he was about to reach the city gate, Madame Chu sent some information she obtained from the soul searching to Li Mu through Bai. Such an image appeared in Li Mu's mind. It was the grey-robed old man's perspective. A black-robed figure stood in front of the old man and said in a hoarse voice, "This little bailiff from the North County made my master very unhappy. I'll give you half of what you want first. After the matter is done, I'll give you the other half. Li Mu could not see the face of the black figure clearly. He could only see that his back was a little hunched and his voice was older. It was impossible to know his identity from this information, but Madame Chu found out his background from the grey-robed old man's memories. The grey-robed old man came from the divine capital of the Middle County, where the great Zhou's imperial court was located. It was obvious who ordered him to do this. The county government. Li Mu placed the 4 puppets in the courtyard. The 3 officials' expressions were unpleasant. For some reason, County Chief Lin, County Minister Chen, and County Lieutenant Shen were all in the county government today. County Chief Lin asked, "Did you find out who did this?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "These are just puppets without consciousness. The real assassin is dead. I didn't find out who ordered him to do this. I only know that he came from the divine capital and was ordered to assassinate me in the North County." The divine capital. County Minister Chen's face darkened. He said, "Have they become so daring?" County Lieutenant Shen said leisurely, "It seems that His Majesty's public opinion rose because of the incident in Yang County. Some people in the old party are very dissatisfied. They sent people to assassinate you from thousands of miles away. Fortunately, they underestimated you and did not send a creation realm assassin." After going to Mount Baiyun, Li Mu now had the golden armor talisman. Even if a creation realm expert came, they would only be sending their heads to him. However, although some people in the old party were dissatisfied with him, in the end, Li Mu was just a small constable. Those people would not be willing to waste more resources on him, so it was unlikely that they would send a creation realm expert. County Chief Lin said, "I will report this to His Majesty." Then, he took out a jade bottle from his sleeve and handed it to Li Mu. He said, "His Majesty's messenger has just arrived in the North County. There is a creation pill in this bottle. It is His Majesty's reward for you." Li Mu had seen the name creation pill several times in various ancient books. This pill was of the upper grade of the heaven class. It took the creation of heaven and earth and could bring the dead back to life. No matter how serious the injury was, whether it was the body, the soul, or the primordial spirit, as long as there was still a breath left, this pill could heal all injuries in the body and the primordial spirit. It was one of the top pills. Having this pill was equivalent to having a second life. If Li Mu had this pill back then, Xiao Bai's grandmother would not have left her. However, even though this pill had heaven-defying effects, the materials used to make this pill were extremely rare. Many of the treasures couldn't be found in the ancestral state. Some grew in the ghost region of Yudu, some grew in the country of demons, and some grew in the depths of the 4 seas. There were also some unique items that could only be found in other continents. It took a lot of effort and cost to gather all of them. Not only were the materials hard to gather, but the difficulty of making this pill was also very high. It was already very rare for the top alchemy masters of the Danding sect to succeed once in 10 attempts. Due to various reasons, the creation pill was very rare. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a priceless treasure. Li Mu had only heard of it in books. He had never seen it before. He eagerly opened the jade bottle. A refreshing medicinal fragrance overflowed from the bottle. Li Mu noticed that County Governor Lin and the other 2 involuntarily swallowed their saliva. Li Mu immediately put it into the flask heaven space. This creation pill was the most precious thing he had at the moment. Li Mu felt that it was a loss to let them take a whiff of the pill's fragrance. Her Majesty was indeed generous. She had rewarded him with a creation pill for the incident in Yang County. What he had done for the county city was 1,000 times more valuable than what he had done for Yang County. What would she reward him with? Li Mu thought about it and realized that with his knowledge, he could not imagine it at all. He looked at County Governor Lin, waiting for him to reveal the answer. County Governor Lin felt uncomfortable under his gaze. He asked, "Is there something on my face?" "No." "Then why are you staring at me?" Li Mu asked, "Didn't Her Majesty reward me for the incident in Chujiang of Gojoseon?" County Governor Lin was surprised. "Didn't she already reward you with a creation pill?" Li Mu was surprised. Isn't the creation pill due to Yang County's contribution? Yang County. County Governor Lin realized that Li Mu had made 2 great contributions in a short period of time. He explained, this creation pill is Her Majesty's reward for saving tens of thousands of people in the county city. Her Majesty also has another reward for Yang County. Li Mu had thought that Her Majesty the Empress was shrewd enough to want to reward him with both merits. Now, it looked like he had been narrow-minded and had underestimated Her Majesty the Empress's breadth of mind. He asked expectantly, what's the other reward? Heaven-grade Fulu or heaven-grade magic treasure? Neither. County Governor Lin shook his head. He looked at Li Mu and said, congratulations, Li Mu. You're going to be promoted. Promoted? Li Mu was stunned. He had been in the county government for 2 or 3 months and had been promoted from a small constable to a chief constable. In the county government, only 3 officials were above him. He said in disbelief, Her Majesty wants me to be a county governor? In your dreams. You've never been to the academy and you want to be an official. County Governor Shen glanced at him and said, Her Majesty wants you to go to Chengdu and be the chief constable of the county government. Chengdu was the county city of Zhong County and also the capital of the Great Zhou. The county government's jurisdiction was within Chengdu. It was smaller than the county government in North County. The county government was in charge of 13 counties in North County. The county government was only in charge of matters within Chengdu. In this way, Li Mu was not promoted. He was demoted. However, the rank of an official was different in the capital. The chief constable of the county government was not lower than the county magistrate of Yangqiu. The problem was that Li Mu did not want to go so far away. In the county government, he could visit Lu Hanyan once a month. If he went to Chengdu, he might not even see her once in half a year. Furthermore, Chengdu was the base of the old party. He was far away in North County and they dared to send assassins. If he went to Zhong County, wouldn't those people eat him alive? County Governor Lin seemed to see his worry. He said, you're not worried about your safety. They only dare to use some tricks because you're far away in North County. When they're in front of Her Majesty, they don't dare to act rashly. They're afraid that Her Majesty will have something on them. Li Mu was not worried about his safety. Unless they sent a cultivator of the 6th realm, Li Mu would be able to kill one of them. The problem was that this was not in his plans for the future. Chengdu was a place of trouble. Li Mu was unfamiliar with the place. Although there might be more opportunities and cultivation resources, there would be more danger. He did not want to be involved in the political struggle between the old party and the new party. Li Mu looked at County Governor Lin and asked, can I not go? County Governor Lin sighed and said, in life, there are many things that are beyond one's control. Whether you're willing or not, you can't change the fact that you're already Her Majesty's man. The old party has already noticed you. Even if you don't go to Chengdu, trouble will follow. Chapter 199. Li Mu had already realized that life was out of one's control. As a constable, it was his duty to punish the evildoers, protect the people, and uphold justice. His position was against the dark forces. Even though he had no intention of getting involved, what he did went against the interests of the old party. Even if he was no longer a constable, he could not change this fact. County Chief Lin looked at Li Mu and asked, why? Do you regret it? It was impossible for him to regret it. Li Mu said calmly, there are things a man can do and things a man can't do. As an official of Great Zhou, it is my duty to get rid of evildoers for the people. What's there to regret? County Chief Lin said, you don't regret offending the old party? Li Mu laughed coldly, I'm not even afraid of offending the heavens and earth. What's a mere old party to me? Even though Li Mu had not been in this world for long, he had been through a lot. He had killed the elders of the demon sect and tricked Xu Jiang Shaowang. He did not want to cause trouble, but he was not afraid of it. He just did not want to go to Chengdu. Now that he thought about it, from the perspective of cultivation, going to Chengdu was undoubtedly better than staying in the North County. He had already emptied the county government's treasury. The county government's treasury was tasteless. Moreover, the items in the Earth Pavilion would be of little use to his future cultivation. In comparison, he would definitely gain more benefits by sucking up to the Empress. After all, she was willing to give Li Mu the cultivation pill, which was so precious that even Dongxian cultivators coveted it. This meant two things. First, she was a rich woman. Second, she was very generous. No one knew better than Li Mu how good it was to be a generous and rich woman. Before he met Lu Hanyan, he ate plain porridge and pickled vegetables. After he met Lu Hanyan, there were at least 4 dishes and 1 soup on the table. He wore good silk clothes and lived in a big house. He never had to worry about money. If he could become the Empress's confidant, he would be able to save at least a few decades of struggle on the path of cultivation. Lu Hanyan already had a master who was at the peak of Dongxian. In this year, her cultivation speed would definitely increase rapidly. After a year, it was inevitable that she would surpass Li Mu, which made him feel even more pressure. Lu Hanyan didn't want to be Li Mu's caged bird and be protected by him all the time. Li Mu also didn't want to hide behind his woman all the time. Occasionally, being behind her was a couple's romance, but being behind her all the time meant that he was living off her. Moreover, although the purpose of the struggle between the new and old parties was for power, at least Her Majesty truly cared about the people and the public opinion. From the incident in Yang County, one could see the difference between the new and old parties. In order to obtain psychokinesis and gain the love and respect of the people, Li Mu also needed to stand on the side of the people. Speaking of which, he was indeed on the Empress' side. After listing so many benefits, Li Mu finally realized that this was a rare opportunity for him. After carefully analyzing the pros and cons, Li Mu quickly made a decision. Not only did he have to stand on the Empress' side, but he also had to work hard to become her confidant. First, it was to carry out justice in his heart. Second, it was to save a few decades of struggle. No one could resist the temptation of saving a few decades of struggle. As expected of someone who dares to curse the heavens and earth. County Governor Lin looked at Li Mu with gratification and said, "I will report the assassination attempt of the old party to Her Majesty. She will probably send someone to escort you to Chengdu. Once you're there, those people won't dare to act rashly. Before that, you don't have to come to the county government anymore. Take care of the matters before you leave." Before leaving Bei County, Li Mu's first thing to do was naturally to go to Baiyun Mountain again and tell Lu Hanyan about this matter. Baiyun Mountain. After parting for 3 days, Lu Hanyan couldn't believe her eyes when she saw Li Mu again. She ran to Li Mu's side and said in shock, "Why are you here so soon?" Li Mu held her hand and said, "I missed you." Lu Hanyan looked at the people in the hall and blushed. She said softly, "Senior brothers and sisters are still here." The elders in the hall looked up at the sky at the same time. She pulled Li Mu to a corner. Although her face was full of joy, she still scolded, "You can't do this in the future. Both of us have to work hard to cultivate." Li Mu sighed, "Even if I want to come in the future, I won't be able to come often." Lu Hanyan immediately became nervous and asked, "Why?" Li Mu said, "I'm going to be transferred to Chengdu soon." Lu Hanyan was stunned. She asked, "You're going to Chengdu?" Li Mu nodded and said, "His Majesty wants me to be the constable of the government office." He then looked at Lu Hanyan and said, "If you don't want me to go, I won't go." Lu Hanyan asked, "Isn't that going against the imperial edict?" Li Mu hugged her and said, "For you, going against the imperial edict is nothing. At most, I won't be a constable anymore." Lu Hanyan smiled and then asked, "Do you want to go?" After careful consideration, Li Mu decided that going to Chengdu was more beneficial than harmful for him. He sighed and said, "If I go to Chengdu, I won't be able to come and see you often. It's okay. In this year, I'll be in seclusion with Master most of the time. Even if you come to Baiyun Mountain, you won't be able to see me." Lu Hanyan rested her head on his chest and said, "Wan Wan and I grew up in Chengdu, we're actually more used to living there. When the time comes, we'll go directly to Chengdu to find you. Although she also wanted to see Li Mu every month, she wouldn't interfere with his decision, just like how he didn't interfere with her. When Wan found out that they were going back to God's capital, she was excited and asked, "Young lady, young master, are we really going back to God's capital in a year?" Li Mu smiled and asked, "Do you want to go back to Chengdu?" Wan nodded and said, "Everything is good in Chengdu, there's a lot of good food, fun, and delicious food. But there are always some annoying people. If it wasn't to avoid them, we wouldn't have come to North County." After leaving this time, Li Mu wouldn't have the chance to come back for a year. He stayed at Baiyan Mountain for 7 days to accompany Lu Hanyan and Wan. Before leaving, Lu Hanyan insisted that he take the Qingxian sword with him. The Bai sword wasn't enough for Li Mu to fight enemies now. If it wasn't for Madame Chu's control, this sword wouldn't be enough to deal with a 4th realm cultivator. The Qingxian sword was a heaven-tier Dharma treasure. The puppets that the Bai sword couldn't break were no different from tofu in front of the Qingxian sword. He wondered how powerful the sword rain released by the Qingxian sword with the help of the Demon Slayer protection art would be. Li Mu temporarily guarded the Qingxian sword in the flask space. He would only use it when facing an undefeatable enemy. Li Mu couldn't come back in a short time after leaving North County. He still had to say goodbye to some people. He came to the White Demon King's cave abode and only saw the Green Bull Demon. The Green Bull Demon shook his head and said, "The Demon King, Madame Chu, and 2 young ladies left North County 3 days ago for Yunzhong County. They might not come back until a month later." Li Mu didn't see their family. He asked the Green Bull Demon to pass on the message. Then, he left the cave abode and went to Yangqiu County. In the Yangqiu County government, Li Mu learned from Constable Zhou that a few days ago, Zhang County magistrates had already left with his family before the new county magistrate arrived. Although the incident with Chu Jiang of Gojoseon wasn't in Yangqiu County, it really scared him. Zhang County magistrates went to Zhong County to take up the post. Li Mu also went to Zhong County, but they were in different offices. Li Mu missed the days in Yangqiu County. Although Zhang County magistrates was as timid as a mouse, he would never be careless when he shouldn't be. He didn't know what kind of personality the superior in the government office had. After all, he was just an official. If the superior was heartless, he would have a hard time in the future. After leaving the county office, Li Mu went to the Jinshan temple. In the temple, Xuandu looked at him and said with a smile, "Congratulations on your promotion, 3rd brother." Li Mu shook his head and said, "The undercurrents in Chengdu are turbulent, and there are constant battles in the imperial court. It's not a happy occasion." Xuandu smiled and said, "Amitba. I believe that with 3rd brother's ability, you'll definitely be able to survive in Chengdu." After he said that, he looked at Xiao Yu and asked, "The baleful aura in Miss Xiao Yu's body has been purified. What do you plan to do next?" The young girl shook her head in a daze and said, "I don't know either. I used to follow my father everywhere to beg," Xuandu said. "Although His Majesty has absolved you of your crimes, the old party won't let you off so easily. Once you appear in their sights, you'll be in danger. If you have nowhere to go, I have a place to recommend." Xiao Yu asked, "What place?" Xuandu said, "In the northwest of Zhu continent, there's a place that's shrouded in Yin energy and ghost fog all year round. It's called Yudu, a country among ghosts. Countless Yin spirits and ghosts live there. You'll feel more at ease there. Furthermore, the environment there is more beneficial for your cultivation." Li Mu wasn't unfamiliar with the name Yudu. The haunted house he and Lu Hanyan had opened in Yangqiu County was called Yudu. After Zhao Yong's death and Lin Wan's revenge, the place she went to was also Yudu. After careful consideration, Xiao Yu decided to listen to Xuandu and head to Yudu. Before she left, she knelt on the ground and kowtowed several times to Li Mu and Xuandu. She said, "Thank you, benefactor." "Thank you, master." Xuandu put his palms together and said, "I hope you can be kind to others in the future and don't harm the world." Xiao Yu stood up and nodded. Xiao Yu will remember. Actually, Li Mu had wanted to bring Xiao Yu with him. However, after the incident in Yang County, everyone thought that her soul had dispersed. If she appeared in Chengdu and attracted the attention of people with ulterior motives, she would attract huge trouble. Chengdu wasn't North County. There were countless strong practitioners there, and a fifth realm ghost had no right to protect herself. Even Chu Jiang of Gojoseon, who had successfully advanced to the sixth realm, wouldn't dare to be impudent in Chengdu, let alone her. Secondly, Li Mu and Lu Hanyan had promised that in this year, other than Xiao Bai, there wouldn't be any other woman, female ghost, female demon, or any other creature with female characteristics around him for a long time. Chapter 200. The Bay of Clearwater. Li Mu stood by the river with two female ghosts, one big and one small, standing respectfully behind him. Li Mu asked, "She still hasn't come out of isolated cultivation?" The big ghost shook her head, "No." Li Mu sighed. If Su He didn't come out soon, he probably wouldn't be able to see Su He face to face. However, Su He's enemy was in the capital. If she could escape the formation at the bottom of the Bay of Clearwater, she would definitely come to the capital. Li Mu only needed to wait for her in the capital. His only worry was that with Su He's arrogant personality, she might take revenge by herself. Li Mu learned from County Captain Shen that Shui Ming was the prince consort and was at the 5th level. He would definitely be surrounded by experts. She wouldn't be able to take revenge by herself. Li Mu left behind a letter and told the two ghosts to personally hand it to Su He when she came out of isolated cultivation. When he returned to the county capital, Li Mu was almost done with the arrangements before leaving. Zhang Shan was in charge of the Yunyan Pavilion's business. Plus, to the current Li Mu and Lu Hanyan, these gold and silver items were just numbers. "Don't worry about going to the capital. I'll be here." Zhang Shan patted his chest and promised, "I'm still waiting for you to open the Yunyan Pavilion in the capital." "I wonder what the Emperor's place looks like." Li Si knew more inside information than Zhang Shan. He patted Li Mu's shoulder and said, "The capital is deep, be careful." This time, Xiao Bai would be going with him to the capital. Although her cultivation was still low, the demonic aura on her body had been expelled by the demon transformation pill. In the capital, this meant that she had a master. Very few people would have other thoughts. Before the old cunning fox died, he passed Xiao Bai to him. Li Mu also promised her that he would take good care of Xiao Bai. After this period of interaction, Li Mu had already treated her, who was sensible and obedient, as a family. At night, he laid on the bed and stroked Xiao Bai's smooth fur. He asked, "Xiao Bai, what are your plans after taking revenge for your grandmother?" Xiao Bai's body stiffened and immediately said, "Benefactor, don't chase me away. I'll be obedient. I can never take human form and stay by your side." Li Mu gently stroked her and said, "I won't chase you away. No one will chase you away. You can take human form if you want. Sister Lu won't dislike it." Jealousy was a woman's nature. However, Lu Hanyan was not an unreasonable woman. She did not argue with Xiao Bai. On the other hand, Xiao Bai was so sensible that it made Li Mu's heart ache. When she had intimate contact with Li Mu, she would take the initiative to turn into a fox. Xiao Bai happily asked, "Really?" Li Mu nodded and said, "It's true." Then he felt a young girl's smooth body in his arms. Li Mu covered his eyes and said, "When I said you can take human form, I didn't mean any time, and definitely not now." People often used the term fox spirit to refer to women who were extremely attractive to men. After having a real fox spirit in his house, Li Mu realized the basis of this saying. Xiao Bai did not realize how attractive she was when she took human form. She was already so attractive that people could not take their eyes off of her even when she wore clothes, let alone when she was naked. Li Mu wrapped her in a blanket and went to the courtyard alone to calm down. He also thought about Xiao Bai's situation. He had to avenge Xiao Bai's grandmother and the entire clan. However, Li Mu only knew the appearance of that human cultivator. It was impossible to find him. The divine capital was thousands of miles away. The chances of her finding her enemy were very slim. Li Mu tried his best not to remind her of those sad memories. He had been teaching her cooking for the past 2 days until Commandery Officer Shen came personally. There were 3 women with him. Among the 3 women, one was about 30 years old. Her appearance was average, but she was not weak. Conservatively speaking, she was a 5th realm expert. The other 2 were younger, about 25 or 26 years old. They looked delicate and pretty, and their strength was in the divine power realm. Commandery Officer Shen introduced, "These 3 are Her Majesty's internal guards. They came to the North region to escort you to the divine capital." Due to the assassination attempt, Commandery Officer Lin was worried that Li Mu would be attacked by the old party on the way to the divine capital. Therefore, he reported this matter to the higher-ups. He did not expect that there would be people escorting Li Mu, and they were internal guards. The internal guards were the Empress' personal guards. They were not under the jurisdiction of the imperial court and only listened to the Empress. They were established only a year after the Empress ascended the throne. The Empress's internal guards were like the brocade guards, the Eastern and Western guards, that Li Mu was familiar with. They only listened to the Empress. Although they were established not long ago, they had a lot of power. They could bypass the 3 provinces and 6 ministries and directly exercise their authority. Although the current Empress was the ruler of the Great Zhou, the way she ascended the throne had been criticized by many. Until now, she had not completely controlled the imperial court. The imperial court was mostly controlled by the old party. The existence of the internal guards was mainly to restrict the old party. Of course, their reputation was not good among the old party. They were generally regarded as the Empress's lackeys. Among the 3 internal guards, the older woman looked at Li Mu and said in surprise, "He's so young." Commandery Officer Shen saluted her and said, "He's Li Mu. I'll leave this trip to the divine capital to you." The woman said, "We're just following orders. There's no need to be polite." Then, she looked at Li Mu and said, "When are we leaving?" Li Mu said, "Wait a moment." In the past 2 days, he had packed everything that needed to be packed. After some final tidying up, they could leave. 2 hours later, Li Mu boarded a luxurious flying boat under the escort of the 3 officers of the North County and the constables of the county government. He waved at them, and the flying boat soared into the sky and streaked across the horizon. The North County was thousands of miles away from the divine capital. Although the flying boat was fast, it would still take a few days to reach the divine capital. Even a creation realm cultivator would overdraw their magic power if they used a magic item for a long time. In the past few days, they were not constantly on the road. Often, after flying for a few hours, they would land in a city below to rest. At night, they would find an inn to stay for the night. In the morning, after having breakfast in a county town in the Jianghu County, they set off again. Li Mu boarded the flying boat and sat down cross-legged. He held the spiritual jade in his hand and closed his eyes, beginning to cultivate his qi. A single man and a single woman in a boat. He always remembered his promise to Lu Hanyan. He tried his best not to look at the flowers and plants outside. 3 days had already passed, yet Li Mu actually hadn't taken the initiative to speak a single word to them. The charming woman with a cultivation at the creation realm finally couldn't restrain herself and asked Li Mu, "Are you afraid that we'll eat you?" Li Mu opened his eyes and realized that the woman was talking to him. A question mark appeared on his face. The charming woman said, "If you don't speak, I will think that you are mute." Li Mu put away the spiritual jade and scratched his head. He asked, "Are we almost at the divine capital?" "There is still half a day." Seeing that Li Mu finally spoke, the woman glanced at him and looked at Xiao Bai in Li Mu's arms. She asked, "Is this your spirit pet?" Li Mu shook his head. "No." The woman said in surprise, "Is she your wife?" Li Mu shook his head again. "No." The woman glanced at Xiao Bai and reminded Li Mu, "The divine capital is chaotic. A transformed fox demon can be sold for a high price. If you care about her, keep an eye on her." Li Mu cupped his fists. "Thank you for the reminder." The woman asked, "You are Li Mu, right?" Li Mu nodded. The woman looked at him with admiration. You have such courage at such a young age. Not bad. I hope that when you reach the divine capital, you will not let His Majesty down. You will not forget your original intention and be a good official. Don't be like your predecessor, the predecessor before that, the predecessor before that. Li Mu was confused. What happened to those people? No wonder he could stay in the yamen for so long. His awareness was even better than Lord Zhang's. Since it was not easy to see through the new party and the old party, he would not look at it anymore. As a small official in Luoyang, he only needed to do his job well. The two of them walked on the street. Someone rode on a horse on the street, causing the people to panic. Wang Wu hurriedly pulled Li Mu to the side to hide. Even Yangqiu County and North County did not allow horses on the street. Li Mu asked Wang Wu, "Are horses allowed on the streets of Luoyang?" "No." Wang Wu shook his head and said, "A Resterly will know about these things in the future." An old woman dodged in a hurry and fell to the ground. The passers-by hurriedly walked past her, but no one helped her. Li Mu walked over and helped the old woman up. He asked, "Are you all right?" The old woman shook her head and said, "I'm fine. Thank you, young man." After helping the old woman sit on the side of the road to rest, Li Mu and Wang Wu continued forward. Li Mu sighed and said, "Is this really Luoyang?" "You can't blame them." Wang Wu shook his head and said, "A few months ago, someone helped an old woman up on the street and was accused by the old woman. Later, the case was reported to the yamen. At that time, the captain sentenced the person who helped the old woman to 20 strokes of the cane and fined a lot of silver. Now that something like this has happened, everyone is afraid." Wang Wu said, "I know a Resterly is from North County, but Luoyang is different from North County. You might not be used to it at first, but after seeing it more, you won't find it strange." Li Mu asked, "Does His Majesty not care about this?" Wang Wu shook his head and said, "His Majesty is in charge of the affairs of the 36 counties. He doesn't have the time to care about this. If a Resterly doesn't want to offend the old party or the new party, then just turn a blind eye. Or just close both eyes." Li Mu originally thought that Yangqiu County was a special case. After all, Yangqiu County and County still had justice and justice. Luoyang was the capital of Great Zhou, so there must be more order. Now it seemed that Yangqiu County and County were special cases. Soon, Wang Wu took him to a tailor shop. In this shop, in addition to tailoring clothes for people, there were also ready-made bedding for sale. Chapter 202. In the tailor shop, a young worker put the bedding Li Mu had chosen into a special cloth bag and said, "It's 1 tael and 6 coins. Wang Wu said, "We're old friends. Let's make it cheaper." The fat innkeeper smiled and said, "This is the new cotton this year. This guest also chose the best satin. For the sake of the constable, I'll give you 1 tael and 5 coins. What do you think?" There would be many places where Wang Wu could be of use in the future. Li Mu tossed him an ingot of silver and said, "Keep the rest. Put it in the yamen and buy some wine for your brothers." Wang Wu took the silver and weighed it in his hand. It was at least 2 taels. The remaining money was equivalent to 2 months of his salary. Delighted, he said, "Thank you, boss." Seeing Wang Wu haggling with the innkeeper, Li Mu walked to the tailor's shop and looked at the bustling crowd on the street. The salary of the constables in Luoyang capital was much higher than in Yangqiu County and the county capital. However, the cost of living in Luoyang capital was higher. With their meager salary, their lives must be tight. The cultivators in the yamen had other subsidies from the imperial court. Ordinary people like Wang Wu could only live on their salary. Although there were many cultivators in both the county and the city yamen, most of them were ordinary constables. Soon, Wang Wu came out with the bag containing the bedding. Li Mu was about to buy something else when he heard a woman's panicked voice. You pervert. Li Mu turned around and saw a woman covering her chest with her hands, looking at an old man with shame and anger. The old man put his hand on his face and smelled it. His wrinkled face showed a trace of lust. He asked, You bumped into me by accident and now you're slandering me. Is there any law in Luoyang? The woman looked at the old man's arrogant face and felt fear. She wanted to leave. However, the old man reached out and blocked her way. He said, You bumped into me and now you want to leave? Fear appeared on the woman's face. She said in a trembling voice, What do you want to do? The old man clutched his chest and said, You've hurt me. Either you compensate me, or you come with me to the yamen. The woman said anxiously, You were the one who molested me just now. Everyone, please be reasonable. I didn't bump into him. On the street, the few people who had stopped to watch shifted their gazes away. Did you see that? The old man looked at her mockingly and said, You still want to slander me? This old man has lived for 52 years. What have I not seen? How could I take advantage of you? I saw it. You were the one who took advantage of this lady. You deliberately touched her chest with your hand. A simple and honest man stood out from the crowd and pointed at the old man. The old man's expression darkened as he said, Who do you think you are? How dare you spout nonsense here? Ignoring the man, he grabbed the woman's arm and said, Let's go. Follow me to see the official. The man stepped forward to stop him. He removed the old man's hand from the woman's arm. Perhaps he had used too much force, but the old man fell to the ground. His head hit the stairs by the street, and blood immediately flowed out. The old man rushed over and hugged the man's leg. He shouted, Someone hit me. Someone hit me. The man looked anxious, but he did not dare to do anything to the old man. Soon, two figures separated the crowd and walked in. They asked loudly, What happened? Wang Wu stood behind Li Mu and said, They're from the Ministry of Justice. There were many government offices in Luoyang. The Ministry of Justice, the Supreme Court, and the Censorate all had the power to handle cases. Among them, the Ministry of Justice was the one with the least sense of existence. When the old man saw the two officers from the Ministry of Justice, he said angrily, Why are you so late? I was hit by this fool. Hurry up and take him back to the Ministry of Justice. And this woman, she hit me and slandered me. Take her away too. One of the officers from the Ministry of Justice looked at the old man and whispered to the other, It's Manager Lu's third granduncle. What should we do? The other officer looked at the man and put a metal chain around his neck. He said, You bully the old and weak on the street. Do you have no respect for the law? Come back to the government office with us. The woman cried, It's not like that. It's not like that. The officer looked at her coldly and said, Take her away too. Li Mu noticed that when the two officers from the Ministry of Justice appeared, some of the onlookers' eyes lit up. However, the light in their eyes quickly dimmed. The crowd lowered their heads and began to whisper. He shouldn't have meddled in other people's business. If he's taken to the Ministry of Justice, he'll be caned at least 20 times. Didn't you hear what that person said? This old man is a relative of the manager of the Ministry of Justice. This man is finished, he can't stand out in the future. The two officers from the Ministry of Justice were about to take the woman and the man away when a voice came from behind them. Wait. One of them turned around and saw a young man walking out of the tailor shop. He looked at them calmly. The young man held a sword in one hand and a fox in the other. He was most likely a cultivator. However, cultivators were the most common people in Fairy's capital. The two officers from the Ministry of Justice looked at Li Mu coldly. One of them asked, Who are you? How dare you stop the Ministry of Justice from doing its job? Xiao Bai jumped onto Li Mu's shoulder. Li Mu took out a waist token and said, Constable of Fairy's capital, Li Mu. The Fairy's capital will take this case. Fairy's capital? One of the officers from the Ministry of Justice was stunned when he heard Li Mu's words. He could not help but laugh. If you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten that there's a fairy's capital. The words fairy's capital sounded domineering, but it was only because of the two words fairy's capital. The county magistrate of any one of the 19 counties in Zhongjuan had more freedom than an official of fairy's capital. Although fairy's capital was several times larger than an ordinary county, it was far smaller if the entire county was included. Moreover, fairy's capital was where the imperial city was located. The fairy's capital could not compare to any of the government offices in the 3 provinces, 6 ministries, 9 temples, and various way manors. It was fine if the officials of fairy's capital kept their heads low. However, if they did not open their eyes, they would meddle in everything. It was not unprecedented for 5 fairy's capital constables to be changed within a month. The officer looked at Li Mu and asked, "Constable of fairy's capital, I think 1 just died and 2 are disabled. Are you new here?" Wang Wu walked up and gave Li Mu a look. Then, he looked at the 2 officers and said with a smile, "Brothers, Constable Li is new here. He doesn't know the rules of fairy's capital. Take him away, take him away." The officer looked at Wang Wu and said, "Since he doesn't know the rules, teach him well. Otherwise, he won't even know how he died." He waved his hand and said, "Take him away." Clang! Li Mu raised his hand. Bai unsheathed the scabbard and placed it across the officer's neck. Li Mu looked at the woman, the burly man, and the old man whose face was covered in blood. He said, "You can leave, but you have to leave him behind." The old man's eyes widened as he watched this scene in disbelief. The woman and the burly man were also stunned. The onlookers were even more shocked. When had they ever seen a constable of fairy's capital going against someone from the Ministry of Justice? The officer from the Ministry of Justice could feel the coldness from Bai. His face darkened as he asked, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Li Mu said, "I saw this case first. The Ministry of Justice has to follow the rules of first come, first serve." "Fine." The officer from the Ministry of Justice gritted his teeth and removed the iron chain from the burly man. He said coldly, "I hope you can be as stubborn later." The 2 glared at Li Mu fiercely and strode away. Wang Wu looked at Li Mu and said in horror, "Constable Li, it's your first day here and you've already offended someone from the Ministry of Justice. The most radical people from the old party are in the Ministry of Justice." Li Mu shrugged indifferently. The old party had already sent assassins to assassinate him. No matter what, he couldn't get along with them peacefully. If that was the case, what did it matter if he offended them again? Moreover, a mere director of the Ministry of Justice couldn't represent the entire party. As the constable of fairy's capital, if he couldn't even deal with such a small matter fairly, then fairy's capital was rotten to the core. He couldn't change anything by himself, let alone absorb the people's willpower to cultivate. It was fine if he didn't stay in fairy's capital. He might as well return to Beijing and enter Fulu school, where he could live happily ever after with Lu Hanyan. At that time, the old party and the new party would have nothing to do with him. Even if the dynasty was destroyed, Fulu school would still be able to stand tall on Mount Baiyun. Even if the Great Zhou changed, the new imperial court wouldn't be able to touch Mount Baiyun. As he had just arrived in fairy's capital, the information he could obtain from others was limited. Li Mu needed to go through one or a few things before he could see the truth of fairy's capital. Outside the crowd, led by Deputy Constable Sun, several constables looked at the scene in shock. They did not expect that the new constable, who looked so gentle, would be so fierce in his actions. Li Mu glanced at them and said, "What are you waiting for? Bring them all to the yamen." The constables looked at each other and didn't move. Deputy Constable's son looked at Li Mu with a complicated gaze. After a while, a trace of shame appeared in his eyes. He gritted his teeth and said, "What are you standing here for? Didn't you hear, Constable Li? Bring these 3 to the yamen." Only then did they run forward. The old man wiped the blood off his face and said, "Just you wait." Li Mu walked up to the woman and the burly man and said, "Let's go. When we reach the yamen, the Lord will give you justice." As the group of people walked towards the Shen Du Yamen, some of the onlookers on the streets pondered for a moment before slowly following behind them. Wang Wu looked worried and muttered, "It's over, it's over. Such expensive betting won't last more than a few days." He raised his head and looked at Li Mu. Just as he was about to speak, Li Mu looked at him and said, "This has nothing to do with political strife. You just have to remember what you should do as a constable. I should make decisions for the people and uphold justice and fairness." Wang Wu lowered his head and said, "But we're just small fries. The people above can crush us with a flick of their fingers." In the Yamen of Fairy's capital, the former county magistrate of Yangqiu, Zhang Chun, who had just been promoted to commandant, was drinking tea in the side hall. In Fairy's capital, a place he didn't know, it was definitely a happy thing to be able to meet one of his former subordinates. At least it gave him some psychological comfort. He had just picked up his teacup when he suddenly heard a commotion outside. Zhang Chun put down his teacup and walked outside. He saw Li Mu and a few constables walking into the courtyard. Outside the courtyard, there were countless people who were looking around. Zhang Chun was stunned and asked, "What's going on?" Li Mu told him what had just happened. Zhang Chun stared at him with wide eyes and asked, "You've only been in Fairy's capital for an hour and you've already offended the Ministry of Justice. Didn't you promise me that you wouldn't cause trouble?" "I can't ignore this." Li Mu pointed at the people who were looking around outside the Yamen and said, "Sir, do you think I can just stand by and do nothing in front of so many people?" Zhang Chun was silent for a while before he sighed and said, "You're right. I can't ignore this case. Fairy's capital needs people like you. A good person shouldn't be unrewarded. Not only will this wrong the good person, but the people will also be disappointed." Li Mu looked at him and said, "Those who seek the people's livelihood shouldn't be frozen to death in the snow. Those who pave the way for justice shouldn't be trapped in thorns. Sir, you won't ignore this, right?" It was no wonder that the Divine Capital Magistrate and Divine Capital Deputy were nowhere to be seen. If nothing happened in the capital, they were useless here. If something happened in the capital, they would not be able to handle it. That was why they left a Divine Capital Commandant to take the blame. Li Mu had a clearer understanding of the situation in the Luoyang from Lord Zhang. The old party was just a general term. Among them, there were members of the Shao clan who wanted to regain the imperial power, senior officials who had made outstanding contributions, and some young officials who were more radical. They all felt that it was inappropriate for a woman to be the empress, but their methods were completely different. Some were conservative, while others were radical. The conservative wanted to seize power peacefully, while the radical wanted to stir up conflicts in the Luoyang and the 36 counties. They wanted to destroy the foundation of the empress's rule by sowing discord among the people. As for the new party, it was the power of the officials in the royal court led by the Zhou clan. The Zhou clan was the empress's maternal family. When the empress ascended the throne, the Zhou clan helped a lot behind the scenes. After the empress ascended the throne, they became the most prestigious clan in the Great Zhou. They attracted many officials who wanted to curry favor with the empress and quickly strengthened their power in the royal court. The new party led by the Zhou clan not only supported the empress, but also wanted to pass the throne to the descendants of the Zhou clan after the empress abdicated. This was the most intense and irreconcilable conflict between the old party and the new party. Although Li Mu did not make a fuss about a woman becoming the empress, in the end, Wu Zetian still belonged to the Li clan. The current empress was only trying to seize power, but the Zhou clan wanted to steal the country. After knowing this, Li Mu felt some sympathy for the empress in the palace. Although she was the ruler of the Great Zhou, the power in the royal court was basically divided between the old and new parties. The old party opposed her, while the new party supported her. But in the end, they wanted to use her hand to steal the country from the Shao clan, Zhang Chun saw that Li Mu was a little distracted. He coughed heavily and asked, "Do you remember what I said just now?" Li Mu nodded. "I remember." Zhang Chun said, "Then tell me, in Shendu, which people and powers can't be offended?" Li Mu repeated, "The 3 provinces, 6 departments, 9 temples, 4 academies, the imperial family, the Zhou clan, they can't be offended." Zhang Chun nodded and sighed in relief. But for some reason, the more Li Mu assured him, the more uneasy he felt. After the head of the Ministry of Justice left, the capital office remained calm and peaceful. Nothing happened. Li Mu was puzzled. He clasped his hands and said, "Li Mu won't let Her Majesty down." In order to reassure Li Mu, Mr. May continued, "As long as you can stay true to yourself and be loyal to Her Majesty, I believe that it won't be long before you become Her Majesty's inner guard. At that time, you will have more power and endless cultivation resources." Inner guards were Her Majesty's personal guards. Becoming an inner guard would naturally gain Her Majesty's trust and gain more benefits. Li Mu thought for a moment and realized another problem. All the inner guards he saw were women. This made him worried. He asked, "To become an inner guard, do I need to cleanse my body?" The charming woman looked at him with a smile and said, "If you want to, it's not impossible." After getting an accurate answer from Mr. May, Li Mu was relieved. Inner guards had more power and could do more things. If he could make a contribution, he might have the chance to enter Her Majesty's treasury and choose a reward. He was looking forward to it. He thought that when he came to Luoyang, the government office's rewards would be better. He learned from Sir Zhang that the government office had a very low status in Luoyang. In the treasury, there were only some Xian-class Fulu, yellow-class pills, broken magic treasures, and low-class spiritual jades. He didn't expect the Luoyang government to be so poor. It wasn't even as rich as Li Mu. Fortunately, he had the support of the richest woman in Great Zhou. She was very generous. As long as she was satisfied, she wouldn't be stingy with pills like the Fate pill, let alone other things. After coming to this house in the North Court, Li Mu deeply felt her generosity. Although it was called a house, it was more like a mansion. With the price of land in Luoyang and the location of this house, Li Mu and Lu Hanyan probably couldn't buy a house like this even with all their wealth. Of course, in Luoyang, the houses in the North Court were almost all official residences. They couldn't be bought with money alone. There was a seal on the door of this house. The charming woman waved her hand and the old seal opened by itself. She looked at Li Mu and explained, "This used to be an official's residence. Later, something happened to the official, and the house was confiscated by the imperial court. No one has lived here for more than 10 years, the empress had only been on the throne for 3 years. More than 10 years ago should be something that happened during the old dynasty." Mr. May said, "What a coincidence. Your surname is also Li." The original owner of this house also had the surname Li. However, he didn't have a good ending. "I hope you won't follow in his footsteps." Li Mu looked up and saw that the plaque was still there. However, there was a lot of dust on it. The words, "House of Li," were written on it. Mr. May stood in front of the house and said, "Okay, I'll go back to the palace first. If you don't want those maids, you'll have to clean this big house yourself." After seeing Mr. May off, Li Mu and Xiao Bai walked into the house. They let out a long sigh and said, "This will be our home from now on." For the whole day, Li Mu and Xiao Bai cleaned the house. This mansion had been abandoned for more than 10 years. The courtyard was already overgrown with weeds, and the house was also filled with dust. Li Mu asked Madame Chu to order Bai to get rid of the weeds while he formed a hand seal with both hands. Suddenly, a breeze blew in the courtyard, sweeping away the dust in every corner. Then, he used the rain summoning technique to wash the entire mansion. Xiao Bai took a cloth and busied herself in the room. The house looked a little dirty, but it wasn't run down. The seal that the imperial court put here could protect the house from the wind and rain to the greatest extent. In the house, the furniture used in each room was also made of high-quality wood. It wouldn't rot even after 10 years. After being cleaned, it would look like new. This saved Li Mu the trouble of replacing it. He even kept the plaque outside. He and Xiao Bai worked until the evening. They didn't even have time to eat before they finally cleaned the house thoroughly. The house looked brand new from top to bottom. During the day, Li Mu went out to buy pots, bowls, ladles, basins, and other kitchen utensils. He also bought some rice, noodles, and vegetables. At night, he cooked a few dishes and took out the new hong that the wine shop owner gave him. This was considered a celebration of moving in with Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai usually didn't drink much. Tonight, she drank a little for the first time. When she got into Li Mu's bed in a daze, she forgot to change back to her original form. In the morning, Li Mu opened his eyes and saw Xiao Bai lying on his chest, sleeping soundly. She usually woke up earlier than Li Mu. Perhaps it was because she drank yesterday, but she had been sleeping until now. Li Mu looked at her sleeping coquettishly. He didn't want to wake her up and was about to quietly get out of bed when her eyelashes fluttered and she slowly opened her eyes. She looked at Li Mu, then lowered her head to look at herself. She hurriedly said, "I'm sorry, benefactor. I forgot to change back last night." Li Mu said, Okay. If you don't want to change back, you don't have to." Xiao Bai was stunned and asked, "Can I sleep with benefactor like this?" Li Mu said, "There are so many rooms here. You can sleep in any one of them. When we go out later, I'll buy you a set of bedding." Xiao Bai lowered her head and said, "I'd better change back tonight. This way, I can save money." You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.